Carrie.
Hi, good morning. Today's June 6th, 2019. We're beginning our morning work session. It's about 5 after 10. If we could stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, our first order item of business is the bid director introduction, which is Sarah Mills-Sands. So, if you'd like, Sarah? Hi, welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Yep.
So obviously, last time we met, had some exciting news that we filled the executive director position. So Sarah is now on your second week with us? Third week? Okay, it's going fast. So wanted to introduce her to the board, answer any questions you may have. She'll tell a little bit about her background, and then we can talk about what she's working on.
Okay, sounds good. We'll turn the floor over to you then.
Well, I am a Greenport native, but I've been away for 30 years, working in other places right now. I'm just finishing up a position as executive director of a small museum in a suburb of Philadelphia. And prior to that, I was with Habitat for Humanity. I've been at the museum for 7 years and Habitat for 4 years, so I have a lot of executive director experience. But my husband and I had always planned to come back here someday to retire, but so we did it a little
So much
earlier.
for that.
Yes. So we started building a house, but then we decided, it's too tempting. We're not going to wait till retirement. So we were happy to, when I discovered the bid position was open, and enjoyed meeting Stephen and others on the board, and I'm glad to be here to help make Riverhead a wonderful place to live and visit.
Very good. Great. Exciting.
Excellent.
Glad to have you on board.
So we're obviously knee-deep in Alive on 25. We just had our security meeting yesterday. So we met with fire department, police, Tim, RVAC. So that's usually a meeting that we had prior to the event. So we got a good direction from that, and then really just jumping into operations for Alive on 25. And then kind of just soaking it all in. And then other than that, I think other topics that we want to focus on is getting a downtown cleanup person in place, which we had budgeted for this year. Part-time position to get someone downtown to just do some cleanup. And other than that, just get her name out there and start making her rounds and introducing herself to people within the bid. So.
Well, you're jumping right in with Alive on 25
Oh, yeah.
coming up so quickly.
Well, Diane and Stephen have it well under control at
Yeah.
this point, but I'm learning a lot quickly.
Good, very good. We have a lot of exciting stuff going on down there, so it's nice to see everything that happened. And the bid brings so much to the downtown community all year long. So we look forward to working with you and hearing everything that's going on and presenting it.
They're a hard-working group. You'll see, they put a lot of time in this guy in particular.
Oh, I know.
He kills it, and,
I've already observed that. I don't know how you have
yeah.
time for your real job.
He's created a lot of stuff for the town since he's been doing this, and great things, so.
So we're also working with.
And Diane did a lot. I'm sure she's passing info
She's
along.
still involved
Yeah.
quite a bit.
Yeah, she's helping out quite a bit with Alive on 25, and we're very grateful for her still helping out with that too.
Nice
It's a
transition
big
then.
help, for sure.
Steve, what does the cleanup person do? They literally clean up?
Yeah, so we did some research, and a lot of bids will have like bid ambassadors, they call them. So it's really just have that presence downtown, litter pickup, power washing gum off the sidewalks, painting graffiti.
And everything spruced up?
Yeah, right, just helping out. When I spoke to Dennis Smith with the Patchogue bid, they've had someone there for 14 years, and so they have someone on full-time.
Full-time.
But we said, let's start with part-time and see where that goes,
Right.
and if it's something that we can continue. And again, with the bid's goal is to get a little bit away from events and a little bit more towards things like that or capital improvements for downtown.
Maybe
so.
they can let us know the dumpster issues when they occur.
Yeah, that's true.
Follow up on that.
Another set of eyes and ears.
So I know you're looking for somebody. I know we had tried to do this last year too, with a little bit of a
Yeah.
show. So if somebody's interested in that position, like what are the hours? Who do they contact?
So we're still in the infancy stages. So we have in our minds how we want to have it set up, and I think it was I had to think it might be like 20 hours a week. They can contact Sarah at
Okay.
riverheadbidma@gmail.com for the time being. We're also working on getting a phone in place of cell phone so that
Okay.
people can call for the bid. And then also set up, hopefully, a location for her to work out of. Right now, she's working out of the Hyatt, which is great, so she can start picking my brain, and I'm right in the next room. But that's a temporary solution, so.
Okay.
We're
If
gonna see if we have some space maybe available. We're gonna
that would
talk
be,
it over
that'd
and
be
see.
great.
Yeah.
Okay. Other than that, yeah, I think we're gonna start with posting on Indeed to start from there and see what we
Okay.
get, and then.
We've had a lot of success on Indeed.
Have you?
Yeah, we have,
Okay.
So, and even amazingly Craigslist,
Yeah,
so,
Indeed.
Yeah.
indeed.
well, welcome.
Thank you.
Very exciting.
Yes.
Thank you.
Very
Nice
exciting.
to
Thank
meet you. Looking forward to it.
We're gonna make our
Us
way
too.
around Town Hall today, too.
Sure.
kind of.
Okay.
Very good.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Nice
Thank you.
meeting you.
everyone.
Thanks for
Alrighty.
coming in.
Well, I gotta apply for this job. Maybe I
Oh
can
my gosh,
adjust.
Jim, you're gonna have so many jobs.
You are gonna be just busy.
Ever think about relaxing a little?
No. No,
Next,
not
we'll
the
go on
resolution.
to Advisory Committee Annual Report for the Veterans Advisory Committee.
Larry, a good bit of feedback up here.
Only on your mind. No, there is, you're right, Tim.
Hello,
Morning,
how are you?
everybody.
Good morning, Kim, how are you?
Kimberly Judd Burns. So update, I think everybody in here came to Operation Eagle Heart on March 24th, so that was the celebration for Women's History Month of, we celebrated women, local women, 28 women veterans at that dinner. And when I came here last year with Liz Stokes and I, when she was the chairperson, we showed you examples of the Wall of Honor that we'd like to do at Riverhead High School. Councilwoman Giglio and I have been meeting with Assistant Principal Nicole Taylor for the past year and a half, almost year and a half. A little bit over a year, I think. Coming up with design ideas. The school officials liked the design idea that we presented to them, that we
The
presented to you last year.
flag is beautiful, yeah,
Yes.
it's a really nice, nice way of doing it, and you can keep adding.
Right, we were thinking, like we told you last year, of maybe modeling Matituck's idea, because they do a plaque for each person with a picture, but there's too many
Yeah.
veterans, and the school principal at the time was worried about not having enough wall space for everybody, so that flag idea was a good idea, cause you could have their name plates on it, and we do have a lot of veterans. So the last meeting we had with the high school was that they had hired a contractor. The contractor was coming in to do the measuring, and we've been getting applications in slowly but surely. It's taken some time. If you recall, back in 2015, John Dunleavy at the time, he sent out a letter to everybody in the town with the veterans exemption, asking them if they were interested in it, and we only got back a handful of replies.
That was for the veterans cards, I think,
It was for the cards and for doing the oral
for the
histories.
dog tag.
Yeah, and
for
the
the
oral
history.
history, so we thought, okay, maybe that was a little too ambitious, it was very broad. And so we figured, all right, we gotta narrow it down and just do one thing at a time, because I think with that letter that John sent out, we were trying to encapsulate all our visions at one time. And so now we're attacking everything project by project, which seems to be more successful. And I was surprised, I went into the town board coordinator's office the other day, and she had a stack full of applications this big, so.
Yeah,
she's-
I got 4, I gotta turn them, just waiting
And
for
no matter
my.
what
Yes.
you do, you're gonna
Wait for
miss
the
people.
DD-214.
Well,
Yes,
they
but
can be
it's
added
ongoing
though,
now,
right?
they can be,
Yeah.
they can be added, and, the principal at the time, he has a wall designated, but then also other areas
You can add on to.
that we can add on to.
So the flag isn't gonna be like alphabetical or
It's,
No.
no, it's not gonna be alphabetical, it's,
not year you retire?
It's,
No.
Polyfiber, that is Polytech Group, is going to be making the flag. They're waiting for a sketch from the shop, the tech teacher at Riverhead High School. And Island International has agreed that, or has volunteered to pay for the flag, which is about $400, so it's nice.
So
We have
we're-
good businesses in town that like to
So you
support.
can add no matter
Yes.
what, no
Cool.
matter
You
what.
can add them no matter what, it's an ongoing, project, and, Jody and I and the assistant principal, there's a committee of people at the high school. There's certain, you have to present certain evidence that you were a veteran, and it could be ranging anywhere from a DD 214, which I know people don't like to photocopy, and it has a lot
Well,
of
they have to find
information on
it.
it. But as easy as a
Military ID
picture
card.
of the veteran in uniform,
Or the VA card.
or the VA card, so if there is any, I know some people don't have anything, so they can present what they can, and, the committee, when it comes to that time, will go over it and see. So that's one, and I see you got a new TV
We
in the
did, so
hallway.
that we can put announcements up, and then if meetings are going on, we can stream the meetings and stuff, so there'll
Right.
be a little bit more, if
It's
you wanna
cool,
put
right?
something up there when we
Well,
get it
we-
up and running.
We had talked last year that, and this was part of John's letter back in 2015, because it was just so much in it, a virtual wall that, that for veterans who served in the town, I know that's gonna be a big number at some point, but I guess you can maybe collaborate with the Riverhead Wall of Honor, the high school. But, in Port Jefferson, they have on their website what they call a dog tag project, I know we discussed it last year too, with the veteran's name on it, and you click it on and their picture comes up with a bio. So I think after we do this Riverhead High School Wall of Honor, get that underway, that would be nice to be able to, like, you walk into town hall and you see a veteran, I don't know how technology-wise it's gonna work, but, I think that would be a nice idea, to walk in and then you could see, at random veterans' names
Sure.
who served.
Sometimes you don't know people who served, who are your friends and such. You'd be nice so that you could thank them.
Sometimes you come and you don't see that, I just ran into my high school English teacher. She's in here, so yeah, you don't know
Yeah.
who you're gonna see day to day,
Yeah.
so I graduated a long time ago.
Very long time ago.
So, yes, I think that is what we would like to do after we get the Wall of Honor underway. Hopefully our next meeting with the high school, they'll have, maybe it's spec'd out.
Yeah, there's a lot going
Anything?
on in the high school right now, so everything that we've been working on with them is kind of been put on hold for a little bit, but
Yeah,
we're trying to get it done.
do you think they spec'd it out yet, as far as the shop teacher coming up with a drawing? No? Okay, all right, so we'll have to.
Because the company that's fabricating the flag has to have an actual design from
Dimensions.
the
To run it
shop
through.
class.
Yeah, they have the dimensions, they just gotta have the design
CAD
and
drawing.
the flag, yes.
It's 5 foot by 8 foot, it's gonna go outside the ROTC office, they have to move the plaque that's on the wall there now and the bench that's there now, and then, but that's all squared away, it's just getting the shop teacher and the tech teacher to, actually order the flag, which is 5 foot by 8, and
And
then,
then Island would do the plastic part of it, right?
no, Island's just paying for it,
Oh,
they're
just
doing
paying
the
for it.
plastic for
Okay,
it,
they're
they're
okay.
doing the plastic, yep.
The shop, the high school shop kids are doing the plastic too?
They're doing the design.
Okay.
Polytech is doing the flag.
Okay.
Well, I
That's what
would
we had
think
the proposal
I would
for.
think a couple of weeks, once they get through graduation and such, things will move along.
I mean,
hope
you're not
so.
gonna be doing it till the fall anyhow. By the time everything, I could get it installed over the summer, and I'm sure, because it takes a long time even to just get all
I
those
know.
things done and then go through them and make sure that the names are right on them, and it takes a while.
It would be nice.
Hopefully for Veterans Day next year,
Day
we'll have it.
In
Yeah.
November, if we could, get underway, but the applications are rolling in, and,
Good.
I think advertising it is the toughest part, getting it out there. I know you guys all walked with the applications at the parade, and, the town historian, Georgette, has them in her office, and she's actually filling out, sponsoring, writing her name down for, and sending in pictures as well, so
Okay.
the
I think the
application's
American
there.
Legion and the VFW, they all have.
The fire department has the applications
Elks
there, the
Club.
library
The
has the
library has
applications.
them.
They're
Obviously,
online at
we
the
have
school
them here.
district.
Yes,
And
so they're available, and they're online at Riverhead High School riverhead.net community, you go to the community link, and then it says RHS Wall of Honor, the
It's
application's
definitely out there, cause I had my brother call me from Vegas, hey, I wanna get, so he was on Facebook or something.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
on Facebook, yes.
I've gotten a lot of emails too from children of people that are deceased that they said, what do we have to do to get my dad's name on the wall, and so it's good.
And it doesn't end, it's an ongoing
Yes.
project, so if the wall goes up, and then, that'll have its own amount of advertisement with that, and then if people see something after that, they can continue to submit names and
Correct.
stuff.
Yes.
Cause I know with Matatuck, that once they kind of put it up and that,
That's nice,
They-
the
a lot of
one they
people can
have. It's
do.
long though, it goes hallway to hallway
Yeah.
with their pictures,
Yeah.
it's pretty soon they're gonna run out of room.
Oh, this is my thing.
Well, when Liz was
Of
here
course.
the other day, when we honored her, she was talking about how Riverhead really takes care of their vets, and I know that you're continuing all that great work.
Yeah, Liz left the
It's a good
back
committee.
room, but we'll
Yeah.
try to fill it in. We have some good people on the committee, some veterans who are very, they're very dedicated, so it'll keep going on,
Well,
hopefully.
this morning before work, I was watching the D-Day ceremonies, and actually it was very moving.
Did you see the 97-year-old
Yes.
man who jumped out of the plane?
Yeah, I know.
He was a parachutist back then,
Yeah.
and,
That was cool.
remarkably good shape.
He didn't look 97.
No,
Well,
that's
there's
for
no
sure.
going back once you step out, so.
No, he said he would do it again, so,
Mm.
okay, yeah.
And I just wanted to ask, I know that the merchant's card for the vets, is that still?
It's still going on.
So how do people do that? If
They
it's
can
a-
either get it at the town clerk's office
Okay.
or at the library. Liz will, she has them a stack of cards in the town clerk's office. I think more people go to the library, to be honest with you,
Okay.
to.
Do you wanna just explain again what they are, just so people watching know?
Yes, there are merchants in the town of Riverhead who offer to give veterans 10%, ranging from 10% to 20% off on services or goods if you present the merchant card from the town of Riverhead. And what the town clerk's office is doing and has been doing, and the library, is when you present proof, like a veteran's, like your Northport VA card or any VA card or your DD 214, they will issue a card, and I think over 2,000 have been issued so far. And that was something Liz pretty much, she handled on her own. She
Spearheaded
did that, a great job. If there's any merchants out there who still want to be included, there is a list of merchants, a brochure that the town clerk's office has and the library has of the participating merchants, and they've been honoring them, so and it's a lot of merchants.
It's a lot of merchants on there, right? Yeah.
It's like, eyeglass places and,
cool.
tire places, and it's wonderful that the merchants come together like that. It probably needs to be updated as far as trying to solicit more.
So if somebody was interested in being a merchant on that, who would they contact
They
then?
can contact myself.
Okay,
That would probably be the best part, is to
Okay.
contact me. My office number is listed,
on the
in
town
Riverhead.
website that has everything?
yes.
Okay.
And they
There's
can
a county
contact
card
me.
too, right? There's a vet's county card that I read.
A merchant card?
I don't think
I'm
so, I
not
think Liz
sure.
is the
Pretty
one
sure.
who spearheaded this.
Because when I
If-
was
if-
I don't know, when I was looking for the Riverhead one, I came upon one.
On a county one, I'm not aware of it, but I know other towns have contacted
Mhm.
Liz in the past about how she did it because they're doing the same thing. So she really started it all, I think, out here, and, yeah, it probably needs to be updated. That's probably something we need to
Yeah.
work on, update the merchants on the merchant card.
Okay. Got a lot going on.
Thank you.
Thank you, we've got a good
Good group.
and thank you very much for
Thank you
being
very
so
much.
supportive.
Thanks so
Thanks, Kim.
much.
All right, next we will move on to the annual report for the Anti-Bias Task Force.
Morning, ladies.
Good
Good
morning.
Morning, Connie.
Can't believe it's a year.
I know, just gonna have you guys introduce yourselves again, just so.
Connie Lissandro, I'm the chair of the Anti-Bias Task Force.
Maureen LeCan, vice chair.
My former English teacher also.
Make that
Goodness.
Former kindergarten teacher. Oh,
But
my
I
God.
think, that must have, it must have been your first year when I had.
I don't usually hand these packets out early before,
Cause then we read through
Because
them
you
and you
read
don't
them
pay
first.
attention.
Right,
so if you want them before, I will, but,
No, that's okay.
what I've done is I prepared, obviously, information for you because we have had some changes. We still are a large committee. We have 22 people. We've actually weeded it down. And I anticipate going forward, it will be less because there's a lot of members that come on and they just don't participate. And we still have that hard, fast rule, three meetings you miss, you're out.
Mm-hmm.
And we were a little lenient last year, but this year we're not going to be, because we have too much going on and we need really all hands on deck.
And you have committed members that are there all the time. It's hard
Yes.
to sometimes do the breakup of the work.
It
and-
is, it really is, and it falls on the same ones
Right.
all the time.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're 5 years into the new revamping of this committee, and we've been at the helm for 5 years, and I think we're getting ready to step aside. And, you know, it's a good group, it's a lot of work. I'm happy to report that we've only had 2 incidents, we actually had 3 major incidents since we took the helm here. 2 this last year. One, obviously, you all remember, was the Walmart issue, and we immediately acted on it. At the time, Catherine Kent was our liaison, so We went over there, and I actually checked the other day, and it's still not locked. I happened to go in
Good.
there, which I don't usually, but, I went in, and it was one of the first places I went. And the other one was the poster, in Polish Town. And, you know, these things are really, you know, unfortunate they happen. Thank goodness, they really haven't been, you know, overwhelming here in Riverhead, so I'm pleased with that. You know, there's been incidents reported, and unfortunately, it's third party. And that's where it kinda gets, you know, in a very sticky situation. And I think moving forward, what we're gonna do is we're gonna insist, if somebody has a complaint or there's been an alleged incident, that they have to fill out a form. Because recently, we had someone report something, and it was really, the facts were not at the table. And unfortunately, an innocent police officer got blamed for something that he didn't do. And, you know, that's something we don't wanna do. So, you know, we're gonna be really very, very conscious of what comes in. If they don't have to say their name, but they've gotta put something in writing, and if they don't want it to go any further, that's fine. But, you know, we can't go what everybody thinks is a complaint, and or thinks is bias, you know, and obviously.
So they could submit an anonymous complaint, but it has to be in the
It has to
complaint
be-
format.
Yes,
Well,
yes, yeah.
Even
because-
on the night that the subject was brought up, I asked, was the person willing to speak with us?
Yeah.
Were they willing to speak to the police chief? And the answer was no. So it wasn't that, you know, we took the straight road immediately, requesting people substantiate what was being said, and it was definitely third party, and it was absolutely incorrect.
Yeah, because I immediately the next day spoke with the chief, and it came back to me, it was not what was reported.
And that is the hardest part when.
It
'cause that
is.
just snowballs into a lot of
It
different
does,
things.
and you know, and they kinda wanna keep it going, and, you know, I'm not one to keep the pot boiling if it's not necessary. And, it's gonna be stopped, because, you know,
But
it's
somebody
just-
can fill out a complaint anonymously.
Yes,
I just
and-
don't want somebody to
No,
think
no,
that
no,
if
there's-
they would
No,
like
it's
to
online.
report something,
Absolutely,
that they
it's
can't
online.
file a complaint. They can be anonymous in their complaint, but they need to fill out the
Yes,
form
yes,
themselves.
yes.
It
We have
can't
it in
be,
English and Spanish.
The
Okay.
incident report is on the website, it's in your packets too,
Yeah.
so it's there. So, you know, we just have to be careful, because first of all, we don't want a lawsuit either, you know, and we're not an investigation agency, you know, we will report it to the police. And we recently went to the Suffolk County, Anti-Bias Task Force, and the Human Rights Commission, provided with the Suffolk County Hate Unit. They had a seminar for us, and it was very interesting what a gray area hate crime is.
It is.
You know, they gave us the penal code and everything, you know, there was one, I mean, and not everybody agrees with it,
Right.
but, you know, that's
Yeah.
what happens. I mean, somebody asked the question, well, if it comes in, you know, because I'm, African-American and they spit at me, that's a hate crime. No, it's not, you know, and they couldn't understand why not. I mean, they targeted me, you know, so it's a very, very, gray area. And, you know, obviously, the unit will not step in unless our police department goes to them, you know, and so there's a cooperation there. They do have an excellent software that they keep track of all the different incidents, so it could become an issue. I actually mentioned it to the chief, and he was gonna, outreach to them to see, you know, what it is, so they can maybe keep better track of any of the incidents that are happening locally. But so far, so good. I mean, I really can't, you know, what we're trying to do is really focus on our education, and that's really what we've done. And last year, I gave you, a list of the accomplishments. So what I did to make it easier, I kinda just
Yeah.
added to it,
okay.
you know, and I put it in red, what is, you know, what we've done, green, what is, pending. We've got, you know, we've done some interesting things. We've had, we had a discussion in a documentary film on Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and it was for, you know, Women's History Month, so that was interesting. The LGBT network, we outreached to them, and they did a sensitivity training with the police department, and they all went through it. So that was very, you know, very useful. The chief said it went very well, and it was something we initiated. We didn't have to pay for it, and, you know, it was good. We are working on a proposal, it's kinda like on the back burner right now, but it's a discrimination and bias awareness for town employees. That kinda got set back, cause there's money involved.
All right. I was gonna say,
What
the
else
last
is
one, free
new?
is always good.
What
Yeah,
else is new?
yeah.
And also, we had a great year, with the How Do We Build a Just Long Island with Erase Racism. That was
That
so
was
well
good.
attended, it was
Yeah.
probably the best we've had. We had way over 100. Of course, it was a delicious meal too, so that helped. That brings
Food always
people out.
helps, but whatever you
Brings
gotta
people
do.
out.
Yeah.
But that was really great, and it kinda has, we've actually picked up a lot of interest from outside communities. And, we're still looking to do a training for white privilege and implicit bias. And I think Jim, as our new liaison, was at one of the meetings. And you know what? We gotta get the task force on board with that before we get out there. You know, there's so many different opinions, and, you know, it's a touchy subject. I think, Catherine, you were part of that, and.
Yeah, I think we have to learn to put ourselves in someone else's shoes.
Yeah, exactly, and I've also put in here for you, information on white privilege, a checklist, and implicit bias. And it's very interesting, and you know what, it can go both ways, but, you know.
But a lot of the things they brought up, I wouldn't have thought of. I thought that
Oh,
was a great program.
absolutely, yeah,
Yep.
it really, I mean, it's really an eye-opener for a lot of people, and they walk away and say, gee, really, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Didn't think of it that way.
You know, so I think that's where our strength is kinda really being,
education.
education. I mean, that's really what it's about. We're not looking to, stir the pot any place. I mean, it doesn't do any good, you know.
I thought the affordable housing program that you had was good too.
Right, and that's really something personally I would
Right.
love to expand on, because there's so much discrimination and bias within the housing. And it's interesting because we were very, active with Albany on the source of income legislation, which did get passed, and the discrimination and the bias with that. And that's not just with people that, have a rental subsidy, people with SSI, even with Social Security, and now statewide, that's illegal. So that should help, within the fair housing.
But where do people find out about your programs? Because you are running a lot of great educational programs there.
We are, that's something, we really need to work on, is getting the word out
Yeah.
there. And
Town
even when we
website,
get the
town
word out
Facebook,
there, it's like people don't hear it.
Yeah, no, I
You
know,
know?
it's,
Say that.
connecting with
Word a
people
lot.
is so much different than it used to be. It's not just, you can't just put it in the newspaper
No,
or put
no.
online, there's also social media, and people's lives are so busy that they see it and they don't write down the date, and then
Exactly.
it comes and goes, and they miss the date and stuff. It's difficult.
Exactly.
It's a challenge all over.
I would like to take maybe, more advantage of doing things here, because we can televise it.
Yep.
And I think that's one way of getting the message out.
Okay.
We have a couple of things that, we're working on. We also, you'll be interested, we're doing the book reading at the Aquabog School of
Oh, okay.
A Pig.
I'm willing to help with that.
A pig is
Yeah.
moving in, and the kids, the teacher, the assistant principal there has really been great. She's put it on a.
Vanessa.
Yeah, Vanessa has put it on a screen and what have you. So it's really been, that was our first thing, and then we're gonna expand it. We participate, and you'll see, I'm not gonna go through it, all the different things we do. We try to be very active in the community with people that are, doing things regarding it, like Martin Luther King, and, we went to like active shooters seminar, different things like that to try to keep, our faces out there.
Uh-huh.
We updated our mission and not our mission, our bylaws. I told you about the hate, the discrimination, thank goodness.
And Connie, you guys work with other towns on certain things, correct?
It
You're in
was-
touch with
I
other
was
towns on
actually at
South
the-
Hold is the best.
Actually, I,
Greenport.
Yeah.
Well, they are
it's
Greenport.
the
Yeah.
same thing. I was actually at the Suffolk County, the hate crime, and Southold had a big showing there, and we were actually, got a chance to talk. And it's just so hard getting everybody together,
Yeah.
but we do wanna do something jointly, even if it's one thing, just to
Just
show
once
that
a year or
we're-
something, just, yeah.
just to show that we're standing, united,
Mhm.
within, you know,
And
with
then I
what's
think it
going
makes
on.
the lines of communications open so that if something does come up and there needs to be a fairly quick response to people, for people in the community, having that connection and contact, I
Right,
think is
right.
a good way to do it.
What we're, you know, we're looking to do, let me just tell you a few things that we're looking to do. It's, town of North Hempstead had it, it's like not in our town, and they actually have a DVD, and I spoke with the supervisor there, and Judy said, I'm more than glad she'll share it with me. It's a Unity and Anti-Hate Crime Seminar, and it was very good. They brought speakers in and they showed the DVD. That's something I'd like to do here, so it could be televised.
That's fine.
Then this is really, we really have to concentrate on, and it goes to what Catherine was saying, not, a round table on homelessness on the East End. It's really, I mean, it's a secret.
It-
I was
it-
just gonna
really
say,
is.
It's not something that's talked
Yeah.
about.
No, it's not,
Yeah.
and, you know, having spent my career in this, and I know this, and it's becoming more and more out there.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
just, you know,
We have somebody sleeping in a gazebo in front of town hall?
I know it, and, you know, I mean, I do get a lot of calls, and there is such a stigma against that, and unfortunately, you know, but I really think that we need to, I've spoken to Sonia about it, they have the problem. We need to educate the people, there's just help out there, but
There
they
is.
don't know it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in Riverhead, we don't have an Office of Housing, or even an advisory council or something that can really get out there and educate people. So we've kinda like taken on a little bit of this because we, you know, we feel
Well,
about
even
it.
through the vets, the vets committee
Yeah,
too,
yeah,
because I mean,
yeah.
now if a vet wants, you know, housing, there's a system, there's something in place that a lot of people just don't know.
Right.
And then the other problem with homeless is a lot of people are resistant
Yes,
sometimes to
yes.
seeking that help. And I
Yes.
think that, you know, how do you cross that gap to get somebody comfortable enough to be able to,
Trust.
And
It's
Maureen's
all about
Haven-
trust.
Maureen's Haven stepped up and played a lot.
Yeah, but we really have, I mean, not that anybody wants shelters in their community, but we really lack a lot of them, you know, where if you get them in there, then you can give them the networking and the support system that they need. Unfortunately, they're just on the street, or they're just wherever, you know, it's sad. But there's a lot of bias and discrimination with housing, period. And it's unfortunate, but, you know, it's been around forever, and unfortunately, I think it's gonna stay for a while.
and just what the numbers are and what the age groups are.
Yeah.
Because I know there's been a big shift in the age groups also, that a lot of younger people
Yes.
also are homeless now,
Yes.
which really didn't used to
No, well, you know
necessarily
what,
happen.
you know what a lot of it is too, it's a lot of, your youth fostering out, foster care, and they become, you know, homeless. I actually am in a, board in Washington on this, and there's actually just been funding given out to give them subsidy for a 2-year period to try to get them on their feet, you know, so, I mean, there's programs out there, but, you know, it's
The sheriff,
education.
Errol Toulon is also working on the reentry program, which
Yes.
is also assisting people in finding housing when they get out of jail and they have nowhere to go.
Yes.
So there's a lot of great programs out there that people don't know about, but that might be a good place to start with the sheriff.
Right, we've
And,
spoken to them, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's really something that, you know, we need to work on. And then, there is also, a reversing stigma documentary that was done by the New York State, the, OASAS, which is the Office of Alcohol and whatever, substance. They did a documentary, it was actually, up for one of the Emmys, they didn't win it, but it was a good documentary, I won it. I did watch it, and, I'd like to show it here and kinda combine it with the stigma against the drug and alcohol, mental health, and the homeless. And that would be an opportunity to bring, you know,
A lot of topics in one
Yeah, but you know
conversation.
what, they go hand in hand. They really go hand in hand, and if we can get 3 good speakers, you know, that could solve, you know, a lot of, you know, issues, hopefully. And then we have, in October, I think, Native American Forum, celebration of the National Native American Heritage Month. We have films and speakers that Noreen is heading up, from Stony Brook, South Hold Indian Museum, and the Shinnecock Tribe. It's gonna be at the senior center.
And I
You
think,
were planning to do a series of films when I was.
We did, and we did the one, and,
But maybe we can get the word out more about those, or you're talking about actually doing them here?
We could, we did, the one we did was at the center, and that was not really well attended.
Well, if
You
you have
know.
a series going forward, like if you already know one for
Mhm.
October, I think you can
Yeah.
also put it in our recreation brochure.
Right.
Oh, okay.
So this way people
Oh, yeah, that's
see
a
it,
good
you
idea.
That's a
know,
good
and
idea.
they put it on their calendar and then they can reference it,
Yeah, that's a good idea.
you know.
You know, it's hard to get I mean, we identified quite a few, but
Yep.
there again, you know, around the table, everybody says, great idea, but nobody wants to take ownership, so that's
No,
why we
I
really.
think it's always a subject matter. People sometimes
Yes.
rather bury their head in the sand than it doesn't exist, so it's a matter of changing people's minds.
June
make them
21st,
aware.
that's Thursday.
So, you know, we need, you know, active members that
And
are gonna, you know.
I know for me, it's more important that we focus on the education and the
Yeah.
documentary. I have no desire to show Dancing with Wolves and pretend that that's going to somehow
That's a great movie,
educate.
though.
It is, and a lot of
It's
people think so.
entertainment value, that's all.
It's just entertainment value,
Right.
so it's very important to me, sitting on the ABTF, that we educate.
Mhm.
So, and looking for larger spaces in the hope that we'll have lots of people. For the Native American, it is my intent to have the American history students invited, because they are, because it would be an enrichment from
Somebody
whatever
from
on
the
the
Shinnecock
printed
Nation to
page.
come,
I think you got
Got
somebody,
it.
don't you?
Yeah.
She got it, yeah. And you know, a lot more we could do, unfortunately,
You have
it's
to put
money.
your shovel in
You know, we
somewhere.
don't have a budget, and,
Oh, yes, we could talk about that, by the way. Southold has a hefty little line of their own that they've had for years, and we have nada.
well, I don't think there's been a request for a budget.
there
that-
was, not since your
Yeah,
supervisor,
so I think
but-
you need to come up with a request for a budget, and,
Okay.
and, you know, we go into the budget process really if
That's
you
why
want
their
something in
programs are
July.
great, so much.
So if you want to write up a, Jim, would, you know, present forward, a request for a budget, and then we can take a look
When do you
at
wanna
it.
have this conversation?
Because what happens is, even out there where there's
I'll tell you why.
funding, because we don't have anything and we're not a not-for-profit,
You don't have a match.
we can't do it. I mean, I was able to get that 10,000 for the training that we had for
Clear.
unraveling, but I had to do it through a not-for-profit. So I got the 10,000 and it was paid directly to Erase Racism for that,
And-
which, I mean, it worked,
And
I didn't
I've
care.
had people speak to me about, well, can I donate, or can
Mhm.
I run a program, donate all the money to, and we don't have a line.
Well,
And-
you certainly, if somebody wants to donate for a speaker or something like that, it's just a donation to the town of that speaker.
Actually, they
They-
can't, I don't think the town can take donations, it has to be to a not-for-profit. So
Yeah,
if they
that's
wanted
the
to
problem.
raise money and then donate the money directly to the speaker, they could do that. Or pay the speaker directly, they could do that.
But there were some
We
community groups that were looking to hold like a spaghetti dinner.
Yeah.
And give us
Well,
the
the
money.
town can accept gifts, but it has to be for specific purposes.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but in other words,
We
if we had a
couldn't-
line,
with the
they
rec
could
trail, we
say,
couldn't take
okay,
any
we're
money.
gonna give you $1,000, but it's dedicated to the
5,000, what was
anybody.
the matter with you?
No, that
You
you
know.
could, but you could do for, like, if you have a speaker coming and somebody wants to
Right.
sponsor the speaker
Right.
to come in, they
Town,
can do
whatever
that.
else.
Anne Marie can talk to us better about that, cause she researched it and said we
Right.
couldn't take any donations
We'll have
from
that
the rec
discussion
trail,
some
that it
other
would have
time.
to go into a
Yeah,
501c3.
But it's something we,
Well,
cause we
this
could
is
do a
about-
lot
Well,
more.
come
It's
up
not
with the
important right
budget,
now.
Okay.
come up with the budget first,
We'll do
and
it.
then,
Yeah.
and then with Jim, then Jim can present the budget that you're looking for, and we could see as we go through the process what it is.
Cool.
Okay, that would help, we could do a lot
Yeah,
more,
'cause there's always like literature and flyers. Okay.
right. So now I'll give you the packets.
Good.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Hey,
you.
we can behave ourselves.
Thank you.
Thank you
Okay,
guys
I'm done.
thank you for all your hard work.
Yes.
We need this for these are for the press.
Here's my, didn't
You
I
don't
say to
need
you,
one.
where's my cup?
It's online.
All right, anybody else
Okay.
with any other questions?
If you
Thank
have
you
any
so much,
suggestions,
yeah,
you know,
thank
if
you
you
so
want
much, I
something
think
done,
this was
you know.
really thorough presentation, appreciate it, all the hard
Thank you.
work, I know that being on the committee's not easy with the work and dedication, so,
And thank you for
thank
both
you.
your work on that last incident. You handled it very, very well.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Alrighty, up next we have Riverhead Preliminary Parking Plan Review. So, all of those involved, to please come up.
Boy. That's Marty Zalewski right there. I have something new, Tim.
Okay.
You can throw those right out. I have brand new stuff.
No, give them back. Give them back.
That was the, yeah. What I did is I was actually out of town yesterday, and when the one emailed me, so I got back, I sent that out, but then this morning, there were a few things I knew that I missed, so I went through it again,
Okay.
and that's here.
Gotta discuss it, yeah, but we're going to draft all of that.
There's copies, passed down. And I also made a larger copy of the first attachment, which is the one
Good.
most
Much easier to see.
important one.
Yeah. Good job, Marty, by the
So
way.
there's the larger in here. Here you guys. And whenever you want me to start, go through stuff, I mean, when you want me to start.
Oh, this is all, okay, I got this now here.
This is not what was emailed to me this morning, is it?
All right, so everything passed out, so we will start off, Dawn, do you wanna do the
So,
background and start
sure.
presenting?
In 2017, we applied to New York State, Empire State Development for a grant under their CFA program for a strategic plan. So the normal course of planning is general planning and then strategic planning. So this gives us an actual course of action to take to try to get where we want to go. So we knew we had parking issues. We knew in the BOA we had parking requirements of things that we needed to add based on future build out, but how and where we were supposed to do that wasn't that clear. So the strategic plan that we, the strategic plan that we sought was to help us decide how best to use the parking we have, and then where we ought to think about acquiring parking so that those parcels or areas didn't get gobbled up before it was too late for us to get them. So the total cost of the plan was $23,000. The parking district's paying for 13. The town, the grant is for 10. And we got a very nice preliminary study back. It took not too long to get the study, but between all the review of all the different interest groups and stakeholders. But I think we have a really good product here, and I think it gives us a lot of information that's useful. Just to quickly summarize, what it did for us was, you know, it identified particularly that at our worst case parking scenario in the summer, high peak time, we're never more than 58% occupied. So we still have a good amount of capacity there. It's just not being used as well as it could, and I think that was one of the real important findings. And then it gave us recommendations to address the timing of our parking regulations.
Chief, you can come up and join.
How we could create signage that would be more useful, and then enforcement of our parking regulations will be important in making sure that they're, you know, effective and adhered to by the public. And then it gave us technical recommendations and policies regarding PILOP, which is payment in lieu of parking, so we could acquire funds for new residential development downtown, which we anticipated and which was really kind of the impetus for all of this. And alternate transportation, so shuttles from the railroad, potentially bike use and things that would alleviate the need for parking, being the principle being park once and go wherever you wanna go, so whether it's shuttle, bike, or, you know, any walk, that's the goal, the end goal. And then also recommended transit-oriented development, so particularly stacked parking or structured parking on the lot where currently at Court Street lot that the town owns across from the railroad station. So that was important because not only did this study look at that, the BOA study also identified that as a parcel that could be strategically developed to help that. So if we were to really increase the parking on that parcel by adding structured parking, we would alleviate the congestion in most heavily used lots, which according to our
And what's that parcel you're looking
new
at?
plan, the railroad station, the Court Street lot.
Okay, yes, okay.
But the parcels that are most congested now, I mean, the lots that are most congested are the Court lot, the lot behind Diggers there, and then the north lot behind Main Street where Woolworth is behind there. Those are the most congested lots. So some of these recommendations would distribute parking better, so people that were gonna stay longer would have to park further away, and if you were in a short trip, 15-minute, maybe in some areas, the parking recommendations are 15 minutes. Mostly they're hour, 2 hour, and then when the Parking District Committee reviewed the actual recommendations of the consultant, they had their own spin on it, and they have added an addendum that's part of the study also, which Marty has, and so that's a good segue to you.
Okay, great. Passed out two things. One is the actual summary from the parking committee for the town board based on our review of the report. And again, I also made a larger copy of attachment 1, which is the actual plan itself. Based on the plan that was provided in our review.
But the plan being what?
I should say the report that was provided. We reviewed the report, we went through all of their recommendations, and then basically, as a committee, we looked at them and we said, okay, this is all fine and good, but let's work on them and fine tune them based on what we all know, living here, working here, the realities of the areas, and sort of take their report as a guide and refine it and come up with something for the town board to consider as the parking district board for implementation. As Dawn had indicated, and my attachment 2, this is one of my favorites, by the way, under the current usage approximating, I should be 58%, it's a typo, I had 50. The attachment 2, this is my favorite attachment. That's my car parked on the public parking lot on Roanoke Avenue between 3rd Street and the railroad. And if you look at the top picture, it's the shadow first thing in the morning, and the bottom picture is the shadow in the afternoon. So any day of the week, I can have this parking lot all to myself, and it takes me 1 minute to walk from here to my office, and it takes me 1 minute and 45 seconds to walk to the corner of Main Street and Roanoke Avenue.
Where is this parking lot?
It's the unpaved parking lot?
Yeah, the unpaved parking lot by the
3rd
railroad.
Street, 3rd Street and
Where they
Roanoke.
Oh,
Where
the
they
old
staged-
Nassau Suffolk lumberyard?
Where they staged for the
So,
Roanoke?
yeah, so it basically, and it's like 2 minutes to walk to the corner of Roanoke and Main Street. That's an example of what was in the report, because a lot of people, when they first came out and said that we're at 58% usage, a lot of people said, what do you mean? I mean, I can't find a spot behind Diggers. That's a good example why.
There's also, it's a 10-minute walk
grab this
from the
property
railroad
to it.
station to the aquarium. And there's a 5-minute walk, if you look, I gotta find what page it's on, but it shows you the 5-minute walk was basically from the railroad station to like sort of mid-downtown, very short distances.
Is that within the parking district?
12. Page 12 gives you the 5-minute walk distance.
So based on our review, one of the things that they had is they had 5 different parking usage durations. And as far as managing the parking and regulating the parking and policing the parking, 5 seems like a lot of 5 different durations was a lot. So what we
But that was the recommendation from the studies, 5?
That's correct. What we recommended were 3 major durations with 6 spots that were 15 minutes. And if you look at the map,
Well, we can look, if you wanna
It's,
look
uh,
at, just, if you look
Yeah,
at page.
just to compare, because it might be easier,
Yeah,
but
look at-
let Marty finish, and then
Yeah,
we
yeah.
can go back.
basically what we did is we looked at, and actually that would be the last page of the report. Attachment 3 was actually their map. So if you compare that to the map that we have here, you see what we did compared to what they had provided. And in here, what we did is we went with the pink color showing 1 hour duration, which generally would be along Main Street, would be 1 hour with a little bit of the 1 hour filtering up on the avenues, as well as a couple of areas behind Diggers on the street sides, and a few of the immediate spaces on the First Street parking lot behind Barth's and some of the other areas that have fairly quick turnover. There were only 6 spaces that were 15 minutes as part of the red parking on Main Street, and they would be in areas like by the Blue Duck Bakery and the Italian Ice Place, near like the bagel place and the flower shop, and down by the pizza place, et cetera. So there's a couple of 15-minute regulated spaces that would be for people popping in, doing quick pickups.
Are these, this circled here, is that 15-minute with this?
No,
one?
actually, I'm sorry, the circle that are white, that's actually private parking. That's Shelley Gordon's parking west of the Arts Council.
Okay.
And I also put a circle around the area that the theater has fenced off. So those really couldn't be regulated
So, okay,
because
so
it's
the-
private.
Okay,
And then the blue color, which is closer to the stores both on the south parking lot, as well as a fair amount added behind Digger's parking lot and closer to the stores on the First Street parking lot, are all the 3-hour duration. So we went 1 hour, 3 hour, and then unlimited. So there's only 3 durations other than those 15-minute spots. We also had 3-hour duration along the driveway next to the aquarium and along Ostrander Avenue. Then the green spaces are the ones that would be unlimited in terms of duration. So that would, and what our goal was, as per the report, was to sort of push the permanent parking further away from the area where parking is needed most. The other thing we considered, which the town may want to consider, is creating one-way streets for Maple Avenue, being southbound, and Union Avenue being northbound, because what that would do is those streets are narrow. You can park on one side of the street and it's two-way traffic. If we went to one-way on these 2 roads, you could get unlimited
work.
parking on both sides.
That's not gonna work on Union, I don't know about Maple.
Okay,
Well,
I mean, it's just a recommendation, is, you know, we're just coming to you with recommendations for you guys to then consider and move on with, planning in
Got
the,
nothing but a business
in
and
the future.
residents on the street.
And before we would do that, you know, we discussed that with the consultant, and she felt that would require a little further study, so that
Very
wouldn't
narrow
be
street.
anything that would be on the table today.
And then the other thing that we noted in the utilization plan is which they emphasize in the report, is the enforcement being critical to manage the parking demand. The recommendations that they had, which would be to hire enforcement specific to the parking, to monitoring the parking. I know way back, we had metered people that were part of the parking district, and then there was, you know, workers' comp issues and all the other stuff, so the parking district certainly doesn't wanna go there. But that's certainly a recommendation that they have. And then just some possible future items that we discussed, which are also in the report. One was resident parking stickers, and that would be for the apartment residents downtown. And they wouldn't be parking stickers to allow you to park in areas. They're parking stickers that restrict you from parking in areas. So if you have the sticker on your car, you cannot park in, you know, you can only park in the green zone. So if, you know, if the enforcement saw a sticker on a car in an area where they shouldn't park, they would get ticketed automatically. You know, some of those really go back to.
what happens if you're full?
Outside the limit, right? That's outside the limit, right? That's outside the limit.
That's what, I'm sorry.
So if I have a resident parking
Right.
pass and I go up to the hospital, because that's where I work, and then during the day I come down to have lunch, I
Right,
can't park in there.
exactly.
That doesn't
Right.
make sense.
Yeah, I mean, well,
I'm
again,
talking about
yeah.
they're restricted to a certain area, they have to park. or-
Correct.
Within, between certain hours.
But they can park anywhere else during the day.
Correct.
Right.
It makes it kinda difficult, because if those.
Nobody's gonna put the sticker on their car, they
Right.
just
Well,
take the sticker off and they park wherever they wanna park.
And
So
if it's
it's like a
unrestricted,
reverse.
if it's an unrestricted area, then people that are going to the resident, or going to the restaurants, or going to the businesses, they're gonna park in the unrestricted area, with making those spaces not available for the resident parking.
I don't know about that. People like to park as close as they can to where they're going.
So,
Yeah, but if there
I'm not-
aren't any spaces available, they're gonna park in the unrestricted.
Well, they're gonna, right,
So
they're just gonna park where they
you
can
know,
park.
the
right.
consultant has a few different models that she's worked on in different communities, and I think the gory details, you know, be down the road on those things. And one of the things we talked about a lot at the committee level was that these are things that if they aren't don't work perfectly, we can always change,
Sure.
but this is just a direction
Right.
and recommendation, so.
But this is not the recommendation
No,
of the
they're
study.
these are actually highlighted, actually in our report, as possible future considerations.
No, but I mean, these are not the
So,
recommendations
right,
of the
on-
study,
on-
correct?
On
No, these are the
page-
recommendations of the
On
parking
page
district.
Parking
three,
district.
you can see what the existing parking regulations are, and figure 3 is the recommended parking regulations. As Marty mentioned, there are multiple types of, durations, 3 hour, 2 hour, 1 hour, 30-minute, 15-minute, and then unrestricted. So.
Can I just ask, why, you don't want any 4-hour parking in downtown?
We looked at, I mean, they
4
had
hours.
such a wide variety.
I mean, if
We-
you go to a
with
show
the
and then
1
you
to
go out
3,
after the show?
We really felt the 1 to 3 and the unlimited was that was based on our discussions, and that was based on the whole committee's discussion, we felt.
Oh, I get it, but I still
Show
think
is
there
an
should
hour,
be.
dinner is or show is an hour and a half, 2 hours, dinner is an hour.
But in the evening, the
I was
regulations
gonna say,
would
there should be
not
a little more
apply in
relaxed in
certain
the
areas,
evening
so you
hours
would
because
park
it's.
and not
Correct.
worry
So
about
this
that.
says-
This
Yeah.
says 7 to 11, but this is really.
But if the parking regulations end at 6:30,
Right,
it won't matter.
right, because in the evening, people are coming downtown for a specific purpose, to
Yeah.
eat or to go see a show, they're not, well,
Well, I think Marty would agree. It's similar. This doesn't deviate greatly, in my opinion, from the recommendations, except streamlining it, making enforcement potentially easier with having 3 different zones rather than 5.
It's less complicated for the average
Right.
person that's gonna go down there to park, too,
Right.
so.
And when you look at this, the plan, I see the deviations are, whereas in the parking study recommendation, the no limit zones would, you look at the north side of Main Street behind the Woolworth Building where the apartments are, and then you look where the 116 units are being built on McDermott. If you look at this plan, there is no unrestricted zone, unrestricted parking.
Correct.
And
In the revised plan.
And in the revised plan, there is unrestricted parking in the areas where there are, apartment buildings with working people that are coming home at the end of the day and looking for parking. So they would, if they're in their apartment building on McDermott, or in the Woolworth Building, or other apartment buildings downtown, like Peconic Crossing, this plan basically does not allow any unrestricted parking
Yeah.
on the north side or on the south side
No,
of
it
Main
do-
Street.
You
It
would
does,
get-
all along the top,
would-
same as here, I think.
No, there's no unrestricted on this plan. There's no white on
No,
the
no,
north
no,
or the
it's
south
pink.
side.
It's pink.
It's a different color.
Yeah.
It's
But-
pink.
But the,
Here, Joe,
it's
look.
very limited.
See here, in the back of the
I
parking
see it.
lot.
Where is it on the south side?
It's on the back.
Where is it on the south side?
Only
Just over
down
here.
midterm.
Okay, so for the
No, I'm not saying-
200 apartments that we have,
So,
There's
but,
not-
and the sticker permit thing would be helpful to that. So I think and I agree with Emery that, Marty just took cause if you look, there are no deviations from any of the time in any of the lots, so each lot is only, but in practical reality, there was a need for some deviations
sure.
or some adjustments in those particular areas, and the individual knowledgeable parking district committee
And the
members.
biggest
Right,
you know,
change
really
is
helpful.
really along Main Street
Yeah.
from 2-hour recommended to the 1 hour.
So, like, I have a question over here. If, over on the other side of Griffin Avenue, west of Griffin Avenue, you have 1 hour parking, you have 3-hour parking, and then you have no limit parking,
1 hour parking for the businesses,
right?
3-hour parking for
Patrons.
extended visits.
Right, but you can have, if we're not enforcing after 6 o'clock, why wouldn't you have this all be 3-hour parking in here? And then it would be, you're not enforcing after 6 o'clock, so you'd have unrestricted after 6.
why does this say 7 AM to 11 PM? Where did we come up with 6 o'clock? This says Monday through Friday,
Yeah,
7
well,
AM to
actually,
11
that's the other
PM.
thing. Our recommendation was from 7 to 11.
So, but the study
I wanted to
study
hear the
has
answer.
recommended.
I know, I
for-
wanted to hear the answer
for-
first.
Well, actually, what happens now is, it's really, the parking's really not enforced,
Well,
and
let's
it's
just
getting better.
assume that it's being
But
enforced, okay?
A lot of people park all day on West Second Street, the attorneys and a lot of the areas there.
And Verizon
So-
and Relay, there's a lot of
Right,
employees
so
that park.
we wanna make that 3-hour, so they have to have a place close where they could go to park all day, so we put them in here
But why would you
all
put,
day.
why would you, but what I'm saying is, why are we, who's parking there?
That would be more for employees. In other words, basically, the way that the map works is,
But don't we use this as court parking quick, don't you want them to go to all the businesses over here on Main Street? So, and you can park overnight there, because I think the enforcement there is only till like, what, 6 PM or something? So you could park overnight there, but then that would allow turnaround parking there all day long. That would be, I think, more appropriate as the businesses grow, because then they can, then you have for all of these other businesses that are on Main Street here, you have turnover parking, because we know these back parking lots right here are the most utilized,
What are you-
right?
what are you talking
So we
about?
would
The-
actually be creating
I-
more parking for
She's got
people
a list
here.
here. Oh, you're over at this small little parking lot over here?
or the 3-hour parking.
Right, because, we know that these are the most congested parking lots, correct?
Well, nobody really uses it.
Behind the Suffolk Theater and behind Diggers.
Correct.
Correct.
We know those are the most congested. So why are we putting open space parking there? Because we know you can already park there overnight, because we stop enforcing at a particular time, and we're agreeing that we're gonna stop enforcing at a particular time, so you're not gonna get ticketed then, right? So basically, you're allowing overnight parking. So why during the day are we not making these turnover spots?
Well, because what happens also is the people that work here still need a place to park that's within, a certain distance. So if we had no all-day parking here, it really pushes the
Are you talking about,
employees much further
Laura,
away.
you're
So-
concerned about the areas of green on that map? Is that, on
I
that particular
don't,
parking lot?
like, if we have a
Yes.
lot of no limit parking, right? So, and in key areas, right? Because we know behind Suffolk Theater, we know that that's a congested area. Behind Diggers, why behind Diggers when we know that is an incredibly
Well, I would
congested
probably
area?
just
Why
make
we
that-
would
I
have any
probably just
no
make that
limit back
run along
there?
the post office. I probably wouldn't do this whole
You know,
circle.
because-
Yeah, actually Diggers, I get the most complaints on parking back there.
And we know that after, whatever, 6 o'clock or 8 o'clock, same as everybody does, alternate side of the street parking, somebody can park their cars there and they have to be moved by the morning because we start enforcing again.
I mean, the only thing I could say is that, and Tim and Dawn were at the meetings, we had a lot of meetings with the committee. This isn't just, this is no,
isn't just us.
any
This is
person's plan.
Business owners.
We worked
and
on this and and it was
residents
like, no, change some of these back to this and change some of that. So basically, this is the recommendation of the committee, but you're really the parking district board. So ultimately, you have to decide, but this is what we as a committee recommend.
Yeah,
that-
and
that's
Tim
why I'm-
Griffing's on it.
I have fun with this.
But that's what I meant, because the parking study that we paid, for and that's their expertise, and I do understand that there's local deviations, and I think that I agree with you that there should be some more no limited parking than what the actual study suggested for some areas, so that people can park closer overnight till we become more developed downtown, and then obviously it has to get addressed again, but, limiting the parking behind Diggers and over by this court area here where there's such turnover and need for parking all day long, I'm not sure why we're putting no limit in there during the day.
Because
Again,
keep in
yeah.
mind, some of this was designed in mind for the employees. The employees right now are parking as close as they can to their place of work, taking that spot for their entire shift. So we're alleviating that with the closer parking spots by making them blue. But we understand that also some of these employees are getting off at 12, midnight, 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, and we don't wanna make them walk tremendously far late at night like that. So we've allowed some
But they
unrestricted parking.
can move their car there at 6.
That's not gonna happen, Laura. People are working in a restaurant now, I gotta cut my waitresses to go move it.
At
That's
some
not,
point,
that's not realistic.
as things progress and we get a little busier and we have a little more,
We can always
Is that
add,
we can-
subtract.
This
There's-
is a moving, we
Right,
understand that
exactly.
this, even
Right.
if we took their plan, it's a moving plan.
But shuttles
Because
at
there's gonna
some
be
point,
some
right?
things that
Right.
work with it and some things that don't.
These were changes that were made against what was recommended.
Not
They're not
against, in
against.
coordination with.
it's in furtherance
In
of.
furtherance of,
Just
right.
that Diggers is, I agree completely that Diggers is one of the most difficult areas.
I mean, also, just to finish up on my item 1, I had in here about the wayfinding signs, which are being handled by the bid, will then direct everybody to all of this. But then the last item is, and we understand this is one point that we, as a committee, made when we were reviewing the plan. we always said that this is something that's a starting point, and it's gonna be monitored, it's gonna be tweaked. I mean, we may have things that, you know, when you look at it as it's, you know, becomes, a set, you know, layout, you look at it and say, hey, maybe this area should be this, or that area should be that. So, until we get it right, I mean, we're not just gonna say, oh yeah, this is great, it's gonna work. I
Oh,
mean,
no, no,
it's
no,
a
of course not.
start.
Right,
And if
right.
we start with it, and then we find areas that there are problems, we will adjust it. So it's
Right.
something that we wanna make sure is fluid, that we can, take a look in 6 months, you know, one season, and look at it in 6 months, and then the next 6 months, and make adjustments where we feel it's necessary.
So, right, I
Are
see,
you
I see.
still, are you still going through your thing? Sorry, Jim.
I'm done with the first page, I'll have the second page, but this is
Okay.
more about the parking
I
plan.
wanna make comments, but I wanna
Sure,
wait till
sure.
you're done. No, I
Okay,
wanna wait till you're
okay.
done. But
I
Jim
mean,
was,
I
I
looked
cut
at
off
the
Jim.
study we got from Schwartz, I realize that, and I appreciate the fact that's a study, it's not really a practical application, and I'm glad that the parking committee was able to make those adjustments. I just have, I mean, I have the same concerns in some areas, like the one-way streets. I think East Avenue is a candidate for a one-way street, to be
Right.
honest with you. Not so much Union because of the businesses and residences there, but why is the one lot, and I'm kinda personally affected, but the one lot next to, the Preston House and the Howell House, and between that and the funeral home, why is that unlimited there? Because I'll tell you why, those are the key spots for visitors to the, Atlantis. And all the employees park there. I see it every day, and they park there all day long.
Where's that?
The one all the
On
way
here.
The one right alongside the funeral home,
Yeah.
Magano's funeral home,
I think
the town-owned one.
I
that
agree with you on that.
employees would
That should be
have
limited.
there's some employee spots
I watch them come in
around,
every
and then
day.
there's recommendations for employees, to have stickers for different
The
things
back
too.
part of it is
They got
So,
buses, they got
there's
no
an
shit.
employee
funeral home,
permit
and
program
just-
suggested in here.
I guess what I'd like to know, the difference between the proposed times in the study versus what we have here, right? So the difference is the unlimited. So how many more unlimited did we create from the recommendations of the parking study?
Well, they didn't really have it numbered, they just had more blocks of, color.
Well, so then that's a zero.
Right.
So, you know, except on this study, this back row here, right? So all of these other rows that are created here are in addition to what's recommended in the study. So I'm curious what the difference is, unlimited-wise, that we've now created in this new proposal here versus what the study has recommended. I think that's important to know.
On Union Avenue, it shows the pink, which is free unrestricted, the same as,
Yeah, so there's it's mostly, I think, in lots V,
Right, we,
in lots L and K,
And
those were
T,
the areas.
Q, T, U, V, I, L, and in, where's M?
M is between Union and Maple.
That's nothing over, yeah.
there's,
So there's quite a few lots that had no unlimited in it and now has unlimited. So I'm just curious, as I said, how many parking spots that is?
I mean, they didn't provide counts, and, I mean,
Well, they did provide counts because I'm just saying, like, in I, it's
Right.
zero. Correct? And in I, it's no longer zero.
oh, okay, all right, you're
And
saying.
behind Diggers, there's no, the only unlimited was this one row up here,
Mhm.
and now you've added 2 more rows, right? And then behind the Suffolk Theater, the only one was this back one here, but now you added 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 more unlimited. And then in V, there was none, and you've added quite a bit. In U, there was none. Oh, yes, there was. In U, there was, where is McDermott here? I don't know where that one is, this Q here.
Q is right here.
Oh, it's on the other side of
green
McDermott,
is-
okay. So,
a-
yeah, so that's
A
a,
portion is,
so that wasn't unlimited either and got changed over to unlimited over there
Those are-
also.
That's Atlantis
So,
employees.
it's just, I'm curious, is it 200 spots, 300 spots?
We count.
I mean, we didn't do a count comparison per se. I mean, realistically, we didn't overthink this. We looked at it as saying you want shorter duration, where you have the most intense use. You wanna go to a second duration, pushing, close
Further,
to the businesses
right.
also, but walkable. And then you wanted to go to the unlimited duration, the more remote, and that's the way we approached it. I mean, we really didn't, And we spent a lot of time on it, and this is really based on everybody on the committee. I mean, we had a lot of committee participation on this, and we went through, I mean, this is probably the fifth, you know, one that we ended up with. And this is really based on the people who, everybody on the parking district who has property in the parking district, uses the parking district, and
Pays the
looked at it and
taxes
said,
for the parking
this is
district."
the way, you know, we feel it's gonna work the best for the downtown.
I'm just
for the
curious on the,
committee.
on the number, how many, because, you know, the people that did the study, right, we did contact somebody who, this is their area of expertise. This is, you know, we told them what's going on downtown. We charged them with coming back with something in their recommendations. And this is a fairly large deviation from their recommendations. So I think that it would be nice to know how much of a deviation
Yeah, and-
that this is, and then go back to them and say, you know, this is, we're eliminating whatever, 200 spots and making that the unlimited, and how, you know, what's their,
Well, they've included this in their addendum, so they've you know, we sent it to them because we wanted them to look at it and make sure that it was viable, and they said it was viable, so, and again,
I
it's a
think-
moving target, you know,
don't
it's gonna
disagree.
have to get changed at some point, probably, but at least it's a starting point, and,
Agreed.
And we did this in conjunction with during a phone conference call
Yeah,
also
a
with
lengthy
them
conference
during one of our meetings, and, you know, to go over what changes we wanted to make and what their thoughts and recommendations were on. And a couple things that we wanted to do, they said, no, we really wouldn't do that, and we didn't do that.
I'm just looking for a number, that's my
Well, then
curiosity,
you're
how
probably
many we
gonna have to sit here and count each
take
little
away.
Well, I
and
looked at it
figure
real
it out.
quick, and I counted real quick, and it's well over 400.
Well, I've got some areas of concern that I wanted to ask about. So this actually, well, we got this first. This just, I think we just got this today. But this has a lot of changes in it that I'm assuming are changes that came from the committee. There's a lot of changes in this document that weren't in there before.
In their original,
No.
from their
In
original
this
to this?
document.
just the only change is the addendum.
Okay,
The only recommendations
so-
that the committee really worked on were the parking timing. The rest of it is, you know, and then we talked about the
Well, let's look on
permitting.
page 10, in C. The statewide demand should exceed 70% on a regular basis. So that was in the original study from the company?
Yes.
That wasn't in the original, the 70% demand wasn't in the original. I don't think the section was in the original, the biannual
Well, but
monitoring.
this isn't the parking district, this didn't
Yeah.
come from the committee.
Where did this come from?
Sam Schwartz, the guy who
That's
we
the
hired to
study.
do the
Yeah, we
study.
hired
So there will be no change in the parking until we hit 70%.
Well, so can I just say, Dawn and I talked about this, and it's an evolving document. And, you know, I said to her that when I read C and D together, they didn't appear to agree with one another. One talks about reaching system-wide at 70%.
Right.
And talking about requiring the gaining of additional funding for parking supply, and then the next talks about 80% system-wide, so it doesn't seem to match up. But Dawn and I were talking about it, and, you know, we're gonna look into it further, so I don't wanna quote Dawn or myself yet, but the reality of it is, I believe, we're there. We have development projects that are ongoing since this study began that have parking needs and requirements that have not been, quote, fully satisfied in the site plan process. In other words, we didn't require 100% parking. So I believe we are at the point.
So but are we backed by that with the study? So this can just be removed? It doesn't need to be in here if we exceed 80%. So it should just be, consider establishing a parking minimum maximum required for residential development with a fee in lieu of a parking policy. And the 80% should not be in there then.
So is this saying that any new development will not be required to do parking until we hit 80%?
That's what I'm saying, I think
At the
should be removed.
time, at the time, and based
I
on the
agree.
facts that were committed, that were presented during the study, I believe that was,
It wasn't in the original.
put, but I
Yeah.
believe that's what they're saying their position was. At present, we know, since that time, there are projects under construction that is bringing us to that level.
Correct.
Right.
Normally, the recommendation
We're
is-
there.
Right.
And obviously, we
So-
need to look
so
further
then-
down the
Right,
road.
so
We need
I-
to look long-term.
That's
So,
That's what this-
Dawn and
exactly what
I
we're
are
doing.
going to work with and get kind of that clarification that the town board needs to, quote, move forward with the recommendation for parking, pilot payment,
Mhm.
and those type of things, to move forward now, because
Correct.
you,
Correct.
you
With
really
not a,
have.
with that, with no restriction on the, of
Yeah, this
getting
was-
another
Because you're
demand.
there, you're
This-
there already.
When they did the 58%, that's
one
that's an
area.
actual study, but when we did this, we gave them all the proposals that are, ongoing, but at some, so we're close to 60. If you add in the things that are in the pipeline now, we're definitely going to be
Correct.
70. But their original not recommendation, but the typical rule of thumb is you don't add new parking until you hit the 85%. So that's,
Well, this wouldn't be adding new parking, this would just be a payment in lieu of parking,
Well,
it's not creating the
yes.
additional parking, so they're kind of two different, they're two different things.
but they also talk about, what requirements, yeah.
Yeah,
So that's the trigger point, usually 85, but in our case, we, based on the information that they collected at the, charrettes that they held, and, meetings with stakeholders and discussions with us, and information they received from us through other studies, that was how it came out. So we do have to just clarify that discrepancy. I don't know if it is a discrepancy, it might be, but if whether it is or it isn't, it needs further discussion.
Okay, so also on page 6, at the bottom, parking district will assess the success and viability of the program, make any changes necessary, institute, alter, or terminate the program. Shouldn't that be the town board?
Yeah, so the parking district is the town board. You are the parking district. The parking district committee makes recommendations to you, so
Right.
ultimately,
So it
you
is
are the
referring
parking
to the
district.
town board.
Correct.
Okay.
so I have a couple questions reading over the study, do you wanna present more, do you
Yeah,
wanna
let me
present?
just finish the second
Okay.
page of the, what the parking district committee recommended. Again, just reiterating on as far as the map and the parking, we did say that it's something to be updated and reevaluated, so we hope this is just a starting point. Now, getting past that, on the next item, as far as future regulations to be implemented, they had they started at a minimum of 0.5 to 1 cars and a maximum of 1 to 1.2 cars based on the unit types for residential development. Basically, what we had done in our evaluation is we looked at a 0.5 car per unit, per studio unit requirement in the future, a 0.75 car per unit requirement for 1 bedroom, and for 2 bedrooms plus, it would be 1 car per unit. That, just based on our discussion, our valuation, we felt that those numbers were reasonable numbers. Right now, the parking requirement in the town code is 1.5 cars per residential unit, but again, you have the shared parking component in a downtown situation. We also felt that that the town should consider an incentive by allowing 1 additional story of height in these areas as of right, if you accommodate all of your parking on site. So if it meant that you could go an extra story to accommodate an additional level of parking. There are many developments in downtown areas where they still have commercial on the first floor, but they then have parking on either a second, sometimes even a 3rd level, that will accommodate the, residential and the mixed use above, as well as support
Right.
downstairs during the
So-
day. We think that would be a good thing to consider. We felt that the payment in lieu of
Wait,
parking.
Marty, I just wanna go
Sure.
back to that. So what you're talking about there is 6 stories, or 5 stories, so you're talking about downtown 6 stories.
It would be one story in height of over, under the current zoning, yes.
We're
Under
still
whatever
in
the
the
zoning
current
is in the
zoning.
future, right, right.
So you're
So, but I
talking
mean, right now, this is future, you're not gonna really start implementing these fees until you sort of go and do your housekeeping as far as the DC zones. I don't see this
Right, you're
being,
talking 10
this
years
can't
from
be
now.
implemented without a full review of the zones. So I think your height, whatever it ends up being in the future, will be, that's why I just said one additional story, from whatever that is.
Under the
in-
current story, so
Under
if
the
it
current,
changed,
it wouldn't be
Under the current
implemented
one,
currently.
it would be 6.
Right, I don't think it would be implemented under the current zoning, though, I think.
But that's what you're recommending?
It
That's
would,
what the
in the
parking
future, right,
district is
right,
recommending.
that's
Yeah,
correct.
that's what I mean, parking.
And then, the payment in lieu of parking, $1,000 per space, they had a range
10,000.
from 5,000 to 15,000, was what they say cost. They went from 10 to 12.5 per space as a recommendation. We stayed at the lower side at the 10, which
And-
we
and
feel
where did-
is adequate.
Yeah, where did you, because I know that we had come up with the number of 12.5, so we took out what the cost of some of the surface parking was now, recent purchases of property and land value, and the number of spaces that could come in there, and that's where we came with the 12.5, so I'm kinda curious how you got to the 10.
We went based on the report on their page 10. They recommended to be between 10,000 to 12.5.
Right, so I'm
And
just wondering, so yours
we
is just prefer the
Quite
low?
frankly, we
yeah.
prefer the lower fee. I mean, that's quite, that's it in a nutshell.
All right, but just was wondering if you had
Correct.
done, okay.
And importantly, that, we feel this would be automatic, but in the future, any of those funds would be specific to the parking district. So it would be for parking improvements specifically. That's just one thing that I'm sure it would be done, but we wanted to make sure that it's
Right.
strictly used for parking.
And Laura, the $10,000 per space is also a fairly accurate number because we use some figures from what the Hyatt Place and Aquarium just purchased land, put parking spots in just to the east of their property. And we got figures from them as to how much it costs based on the number of spaces and whatnot. So the 10,000 really fit in better than going to the 12.5.
Would that
Yeah, I thought
pile
we
up?
came up with 12.5 from
Well,
doing that, with the
because
paving and everything else.
I worked with Mason Haas, several times, and he ran the numbers, we ran the numbers, we got it confirmed, talked to Highway about the cost of materials and engineering, and that's why it came in at the number it did.
Mhm. We just went by one that was
Right.
just recently done, and we know how much it costs. It
That, we
wasn't
use the
in
same
theory.
lot, that's what I'm saying,
Right.
we use the same lot, but,
But Brian
That-
Zuka, who is with the Hyatt and the Aquarium, who built the lots, I mean, he's on the parking district committee, right? I think I saw his name there.
Yes.
So he probably gave you more accurate numbers as
Correct,
to what
that's
it
what I'm
costs to
saying. That's where we got them
build.
from.
Yep.
My question to institute a pile-up, and I think it's a good idea, as long with, I think every parking spot on Main Street should be metered and timed and paid for, but, in order to institute a pile-up, we're gonna have to redo the entire DC1 zoning, right, with those parking restrictions and parking regulations.
no.
Well, right now, we're maxed out on apartments for the most part, so it's
I know
really-
that, but DC1 is 0 to 0 with, no parking.
No, I
So
know.
we have to get rid of that.
But what I'm saying is the ones that are in the hopper now, and I agree with you, when the master plan's gonna have to look at it and see whether or not more apartments would be created,
'Cause I
other,
hate my
over the
fellow coming,
500, and if
having
so,
that right
then.
and all of a sudden, strip to me, so.
You know what I'll do? Let me finish the last two items, because they're pretty quick.
Why? You got nowhere to go.
Future planning consider, now this is not part of a recommendation now, but as a committee, when we discuss this, we're looking at things pretty broad scope. And we're looking toward the future. One of the things that we've talked about, to a fair extent, she's already pass those down, was, two things. We would think that in the future, that the cap on DC1 would be omitted, and it would be more market-driven, but it would have to be done in conjunction with a future study. I know the town's talking about redoing the master plan now, and all those other things. And then in conjunction with that, the parking district committee supports expanding the parking district further north to Railroad Avenue, and then west over to Osborne Avenue. If you look at this first map, it's really interesting, because the pink is the parking district boundary, and the blue is the current DC1 boundary. And I'm only using DC1 because it's the one that's most dependent on the parking district, okay? And on the second page, and this is just a sketch, it's not an official recommendation, this is just some of our thoughts that we've looked at. would be extending DC one up to Railroad Avenue and across to Osborne Avenue in conjunction with the transportation-oriented development, and possibly even further south of that, between Osborne, Court Street and Main Street, and then even possibly further along the river. These are just thoughts, they're not specific recommendations, but one of the things that we feel that's important is that moving forward, you know, you have discussions about the zoning downtown and other things going on. Going forward, I think every committee, all the committees that are looking at these things, realize that in the future, all of the DC zones, DC one, you know, all of them have to be looked at and tweaked and updated, maybe as part of this master plan, or maybe they could be prioritized as the master plan starts to run through, and so let's get this area fixed and keep moving through. So any of these ideas would be in conjunction with a more in-depth study, but we just wanted you to know that as a committee, we certainly favor extending the parking district further in the future, and we think that would be beneficial to the town. Currently, the way the parking district is set up, it's really not very sustainable. I mean, we really can't afford to do that much. You know, it's just not a very sustainable district, the way it's set up at present. And then lastly, just a couple of additional items. We would like the town board to officially notify the town of Southampton that a good example would be the Peconic Paddler project, but really any other projects within 500 feet of the parking district, we would like the town of Riverhead to request involved agency status under SECR with the town of Southampton for projects that are being presented, because if the Peconic Paddler project is built as it is now, or it was originally proposed, it's a store with their own parking.
But just so you know, because of the proximity and we bought them, we already are an involved agency.
Good, thank you.
It's-
We just wanted to make
yeah.
sure, that's all. We weren't sure if that was the case.
Because I think they're now updating their plan to have 2,500 apartment units on the south side of the river.
Now, if we are involved, though, the parking district would love to get that information and be able to give you some information on it, so.
It was 1,000
yeah, when they
originally, now
get
they're
you,
upping it
if
to
they send you anything
2,500.
as involved agency that could have an effect on parking, we would certainly like to have an opportunity to look at it on your behalf
Yeah,
and give information about it.
especially, not only for these purposes, but for our school district purposes, if they're upping the number from 1,000 to 2,500 units, that is going to have a tremendous impact on our school district.
A lot of taxes coming into us.
Sounds like.
Not really, they're at a different equalization rate on the south side of the river than Riverhead people pay in taxes.
And just the last note was just to let you know that.
They pay a lot less.
The
over there.
last note was just to let you know that the First Street parking is gonna be off to the fall because of we're still awaiting the contract from the county, so just to bring you up to speed on that. But that's basically the report that was really a result of the efforts of the entire committee, and, you know, through quite a few meetings and
Thank
quite
you
a
for
bit of
that.
effort.
I won't debate the
So-
issue. Thank you for that.
So I have a few
I like it.
questions, if everybody's done with their presentations and their questions, I know.
I have some questions, but I can wait.
Go ahead, you already started, so.
All right, I'm almost done anyway. So just checking, on page 4, it talks about the appendix. And is this, who drew this appendix? Did this come with the study?
When that printed out, no, the appendix was the parking district
This one.
committee's recommendations,
Oh,
yes.
this is a new appendix then.
No, that's the appendix that was
I think
From
that's
the
part
this.
of
part-
the preliminary
right,
study.
that's this one.
Yes, correct, same document, yes.
Okay, so that's been altered a lot. And also, page 7, they're talking about hiring someone. For this reason, Riverhead will designate a staff member exclusively to monitor parking enforcement efforts. But that will be overseen by the police department, I would assume,
That's what I assumed.
Yeah.
Me too.
right? Okay, so just my overall concerns are, as with all studies, I feel as though so often we get these studies done and then we either shelve them or we waver from them a lot. You know, we hire these outside companies, I would like to, you know, listen to the advice that they give us, and I feel like a lot of these, I know they're just recommendations, which you said several times, but a lot of them really waver pretty far from the study. So that's a concern of mine.
Well,
You mean
that
just
was-
in
that
terms
was
of the
done-
parking, the timing, a
Oh,
lot
just
of them,
this is a
or are
lot
there
of-
other ones
Yeah,
that you're
this is a lot
concerned
of,
about?
this is a lot of changes, yes.
Just
the
in the
timing.
timing section,
Right.
cause there are, the important other components are the practical things, the pile up and things, I don't think they've made any recommendations. Are there other concerns you have about changes? Or is it just
I
really
think
the duration
Just
issue?
overall, right, and the duration issue is definitely is one.
I think the study is deficient in that it doesn't show the number of employees that actually work downtown. It doesn't show the number of seating counts for the restaurants, and it doesn't show the number of apartments that are being built and that currently exist in their study. It doesn't address any of those things. And when you're talking about pushing all, unlimited parking over by the courts, I think it's unreasonable. I think their study's deficient in not identifying the employee count, the apartment count, and the seating count for the restaurants.
I agree with all comments, and you're right, we do a lot of studies, and I got a drawer full of them, but
Right.
this is the first time I've seen a study done, I mean, these are outside people, and of course, they do it very generalized, based on formulas, based on other towns that they've worked in, but then there comes a practical application, which is why it went through the parking committee, which, and I appreciate all the work that you all did on that. So now it comes down to meshing this, what they think would work, to what we know will work, and trying to put the two together. So I think this is pretty comprehensive. I never take a study based without,
Well, how much did you say
Okay.
this study was?
So I wanna,
Oh, it's a good
I refrained
foundation.
from calling it a study
Certainly
for a
not the
very
law.
long time, and I haven't said it, but this is really a strategic parking plan.
How much was this
The
strategic
total parking plan costs $23,000, and it gives very specific recommendations for us to implement. So it's not just saying, gee whiz, you have a parking problem, and maybe we should do this, and maybe we should do that. It's saying, this is the things that we're recommending that you do based on our expertise. And some of the information that they used were parking counts that they did personally. But we didn't wanna spend a lot of money because we didn't have a lot of money, so we limited the number of counts that they actually did. They used information from the BOA, and then they actually conducted stakeholder events where they came here from their office, and they came downtown, and all the stakeholders were invited. And in terms of the information on potential development, we did provide that to them, so they did have a lot of the
BOA has
baseline
it.
information.
BOA has a lot of that.
And in addition to the BOA, what we were, what's proposed in site plan currently, the things that are in
Right.
the pipeline, the things that we
Yes.
think might happen, it was it was a 1.5-year process, so I think it was pretty comprehensive, and it gives us a real, something with some teeth that we can actually implement.
All
And-
I'm saying is when we have an outside company, that we pay for to do a study or a, what do you call it?
Strategic plan.
Strategic plan, I feel like we should follow the recommendations
that's
and
why we're
use
here.
them. I mean,
That's why
so
we're
many,
here.
I agree with Jim, it seems like so many of the past studies just got shelved and we didn't use them, and so
So the next step
that's
would
my
be, that's
point.
perfect
If I-
segue to the next steps, unless
If I
you're
could
not
just
done
ask
now.
my questions?
Sure.
Okay, so on the corner of Griffin Avenue and Main Street, where it shows, in the strategic plan on the corner of Griffin, that the only, free unrestricted parking, I would like to know those number of spaces, because you have the apartment building that's on the corner of Griffin and Main, you have all the apartments that are above the stores all along Main Street, that I don't think were taken into consideration when they restricted the amount of unrestricted parking.
The only thing with that, Jody, is the way they did it, or the way they explained it, was that, realizing that people had to park overnight, that there was enforcement hours, right? So you had enforcement hours of, I don't know what they recommended here.
8 PM,
No,
that,
nine.
it ends at 8 or 9 PM.
No, there was different things. There was standard enforcement, which was 9 AM to 6 PM. So when somebody came home from work, they could then park in an area without getting ticketed. And then there was other increased enforcement areas between 9 AM and 9 PM. So I think adjusting those to accommodate what you're saying, I think that's maybe appropriate.
But the problem is that there's a crossover between the restaurants. So if you say at 6 PM, we're gonna end enforcement, and people are not only getting home from work to go in their apartments on the north side, on the corner of Griffin and Main, and then also above the stores, but you also have Diggers and you have the restaurants that are all in that area that are coming from work to park for restaurants. So I think that, like I said, I think that
But the
the
overnight,
plan is deficient in that it doesn't identify the number of apartments that we currently have downtown, above all those stores and in that corner building. And it doesn't address the number of seats in the restaurants that people are gonna be coming to, and it doesn't address the employee counts for those restaurants and for those facilities. So-
In what way?
It doesn't identify the apartments or the seat counts or the employees.
But for creating additional overnight parking or conditional long-term parking? I'm not sure
Long-term
what you're
parking.
looking at, okay.
Because there's, on the plan that they provided, there's very limited unrestricted parking. Not enough, according to the business owners that are on the parking district committee that have made this recommendation to us, that are more familiar with when the big problems are, because they're living it every day.
I don't know, but it just seems to be the same business owners that are complaining that there's not enough turnover in the parking to help support their businesses.
Right, but this is,
In particular areas, like behind Diggers, particularly behind Diggers and, behind the Suffolk Theater, and then also over by this court area here. So I know there's a fine line between it, I just don't know if we've gone past that fine line here in allowing too much of the unrestricted
I think it's safe to
parking.
say that the study is just that, and I'll reiterate that the practical application comes down to those who live and work and breathe here, to see how that works.
I understand,
So-
but
That's what this is.
I think what Dawn is saying,
that's
that this
exactly what
isn't
this is.
isn't a study, we asked for
A strategic
specific,
plan, I
a
get
strategic
it.
plan to address the needs of our community based on the number of retail space we have, the employees,
get it.
and the number of
Call it what
businesses
you
and
will, it
apartments.
still needs a
that-
practical application.
I'm not disagreeing with it, I'm just, from
right, I don't
some of
disagree
these
with
things,
you.
I
If
think
I
we're a
could
little
just
bit,
finish.
yeah.
We did ask for a strategic plan, but they didn't identify those three things that you just mentioned, Laura. You said we asked them for a plan based on the businesses, based on the apartments, but they don't identify that in the plan, that they studied that, and I believe I heard Dawn say that it was a lot more money to do that, and we didn't have it for the plan.
Well,
So-
what we gave them was the existing information, they had the stakeholder meeting, and then they had the BOA.
I was at the stakeholder meeting, and there was not really a count as to the number of seats in restaurants, the number of apartments,
Yeah.
and the number of employees that are needed to get those businesses going through 11 PM at night. I also noticed in the study, or in the plan, that it says that there is a strong perception that these lots are unsafe, particularly at night. It will be crucial to provide permit holders with a reliable means of getting to and from these facilities, or offer a discounted ride share to serve as a guaranteed ride home for employees who do not feel uncomfortable walking during who do not drive, providing permit holders with a safe means of getting to their vehicle if they feel uncomfortable walking during specific times. Because the unrestricted parking is pushed over to the courts. So if you're asking somebody from the aquarium to park over by the
Well,
courts, and I hear
Unrestricted is different than overnight parking, there's two
Yeah, but
different categories
if I
that
could
are-
finish.
Yeah.
Okay, so I see a lot of 2, 3, 4 hour parking in the study, but not enough unrestricted in close proximity to where the employees, I don't know that we're gonna have police escorts every night when the Hyatt, when a
agree
wedding
with you.
gets out at the Hyatt at 11 o'clock at night. I mean, Catherine, you talk a lot about perception and safety downtown, and I don't know how you would feel leaving the Hyatt at 11 o'clock
But
at
it-
night and making your way to the courts to where you could have parked there for more than 4 hours to work at a wedding.
But I think that's where there's the difference, there's two different categories, right, that we're kind of mingling together, that one is overnight parking and one is employee parking, and they're two separate permits. So I don't disagree that some of these should be, employee parking spaces, but that's very different
My
than
question is,
unlimited overnight.
your whole
Where
argument is
you could leave
based
your car
on-
there for 3 days, 4 days, 5 days.
Your whole concerns are based on the strategic plan, which we obviously see has been massaged and made more practical. So why aren't we talking about what we're going to massage instead of something that we know was probably flawed on a practical level?
I don't disagree with you there. I also do not see any recommendation for a parking garage in this
I'll give
plan.
you a couple.
It's, so they're calling it,
We need a parking garage.
it's in,
Yes, eventually.
TOD.
section,
It's, on page 9, I think. Require a transportation, no.
I have it, hold on. It's in section 4. It's on page 11, F. So they're talking about transit-oriented development at the railroad station lot. So that's been sort of the target lot for the BOA and for this, and,
So in here, on page 11, it says that a parking
well,
garage.
it's talking about potential structured parking, so
Where's
TOD, which would be, transit-oriented development, so that would increase the parking there.
okay, so it says in here a recommendation for a parking structure there? The structure would
A
replace the
single
parking
parking
supply.
structure would be
There it is.
constructed on a portion of Lot C.
On a portion of Lot C. But it doesn't identify the number of spaces that could be provided. I don't know,
So
I
there's,
think that this is a little deficient, that's all.
there's three
I
27
like this one better.
spaces in the, yeah, and I think the consultant was very happy with the parking district committee's suggestions. So, and there weren't really any concerns on her part. She understood that the boots on the ground people are gonna have real, information that
Absolutely.
she might not have, and as I mentioned, this is a very, quick and dirty study, but it gives us a lot of information, and we actually, used this study to leverage the next CFA, grant that we got to study specifically the TOD at that area. We're working on that now, which is recommended in the BOA, and we really leveraged those two things in this new DRI application, so we're hoping that we can, move in that direction.
Right.
I think the best way to define it is this is really a today plan. This is a today plan. This is a plan for us to start. And on page 4, they basically looked at what we did and they said, we would recommend going ahead with that for 6 months, which is what we will agree to. We said, let's take another look at it in 6 months.
But we have to sign everything for a
Right.
6-month period.
Right.
Yeah, so we're gonna talk, we spoke to her about how other communities have done that, and she's gonna give us some recommendations
Right.
on how best to sort of implement. We talked about a real public information campaign, because, we would like people to know that enforcement's starting and things are changing,
And
so.
there's so many different parking times in one
Yeah.
little area that that's
how we're
gonna be
do
a
that.
challenge.
So, and then it also works well with wayfinding signs, because the wayfinding signs, will give, broader and quicker information to the driver. The driver will be able to see based on color coding, and so the implementation, and I think, Catherine, you're 100% right, is the key here, and so we really need to work on enforcement. That's gotta be very, we have to be real serious about that, because,
We do.
if we don't,
And I think
enforce it, it
we've
doesn't work.
stated, we are committed to that, so.
yeah, and then
Right.
just in terms of, the next step would be for us to have a seeker determination on this, and then for you to consider what recommendations you wanna implement and which you don't, and then adopt it formally, and then we can start actually doing the local laws that are gonna be needed to change the parking regulations, work on the signage, and sort of coordinating all that. We have a lot more work to do. This is the first part, but I think it's a great direction.
Where is the plan for the additional 67 spots in this back parking
It's-
lot on the north side?
That's also, it's,
It's an
we
overlay
sent
of
that to them also.
I know, but this plan right here that we're ready to go with, I mean, there's a lot of white space on the north side behind the Woolworth
Well,
building.
like I
and-
said, this is a today plan, so in the future, when that's
exists
done,
today?
they'll obviously,
There'll be another
proportionally, it will
67
be,
back there.
it'll be reconfigured. As a matter of fact, I think the one that's in the appendix on there, the one that's on the appendix had the plan with First Street parking lot being reconfigured.
Oh, there it is.
Okay, you're right. But we felt that in terms of preparing a recommendation to the town board today, since that doesn't exist, we're showing it based on what the current layout is. When that area is reconfigured, it'll be restriped and reconfigured accordingly. So, realistically, we were hoping that this would move forward and, start to, improve the utilization of the existing parking that we have now, and with the existing downtown that we have now, as a starting point moving forward.
Well, also, we thought that the implementation of putting a parking garage downtown, that property behind Maximus and Suffolk Theater might be the location that would be recommended for a parking garage.
I think that's a better idea
So
also.
we didn't really wanna put money in and redo that parking lot if this study or this plan was gonna come and show us that that's where that parking garage should be, and they didn't show that.
It
They
does-
showed the parking garage further away. I agree, with Jody, I think that is the proper area for, if we're gonna do a parking garage at some point in
First
time,
Street?
that would be the
North side of
absolute
First Street?
Yeah.
most centrally located area to do it. That would serve from the aquarium down to Griffin Hardware. I mean, that's right in the middle of everything.
You're right.
So
I
to
agree.
me, that makes sense.
And ultimately, maybe that's an
I don't think you need
additional-
a hell of a big one
Right.
either.
Well, you sell the air rights over it for development,
So
build the
we-
parking lot underneath.
So the nice part
That's
about
all
it is that you
all
own.
for it.
I
Yeah,
have,
no,
I
that's-
have,
that's
I
true.
have a bunch of questions though, if I can go through them. On page 4, where you're looking to do this 6-month pilot, temporary pilot, and there's data collection here, how is that getting done and by who?
So when we did data collection last, we used our interns. We our summer interns, they worked with them last summer, and so it didn't cost us anything. We could do that again, and our consultant could give us just the forms that they need to fill out and the information that they need to collect it, and it
And
worked out well.
what are gonna be our parameters to decide whether this is working or not? I think going in, we need to decide what the parameters
Yeah,
are.
that's
So-
something to talk about. I don't, it'd be sort of up to you what you think
So that's one question.
would be working and what wouldn't be
Well, I
working.
think you're gonna find out in that 6-month period.
Right.
But we need to know what our,
Find out if there's a trouble spot. You're not gonna know it ahead of time.
But a survey maybe at the restaurants, did you have a problem parking today and where'd you park, or,
have you noticed any change?
right,
Even.
have you, yeah, something like that I think is a good
Well, I think the
idea.
committee too also would be the boots on the ground again with that, because those are the business owners that are living it day to day, and certainly the committee could report to the board on what
But
they
I think,
think
yeah,
is working and
but I
what's
think we
not.
should put some definite
You want some
questions and
objective-
parameters in there,
objective
yeah, to see
criteria for
whether it's
sure.
working or not, increase in business, whatever the customer surveys as they come in, whatever it is that we need to do, but we should get them.
Okay.
Some of the way the unified signage, we don't have to go into it now, cause it's a little bit of the details, but I think some of it has to just be tweaked a little bit for the way it's done and where they're gonna be. I think I saw the plan in here, I don't know who did this plan, or did this come from the Schwartz and to do this with all the
Consultant.
changes?
Yeah.
But since we're having all sorts of different times in different lots, it may need to get
Yeah,
tweaked
oh,
a bit.
for sure.
What I've seen in other towns, what they've done is if there's like restricted parking between 8 AM and 5 PM, that they'll have a sign, and on the top, it'll have the green color for the 8 AM to 5 PM, and then it'll have the yellow color below from 5 PM to 10 AM, or what have you. So the signs are multicolored, so that there aren't too many of them, and then everything can be on one sign in a particular zone.
Could take you
And they're
half hour to
striped-
read when you get into a
They're,
parking lot.
they're,
You know,
they're
and-
striped the same way too.
The
And
devil's
we
in the
could have a
details here.
mock-up. Have
Yeah.
highway department do it like that, and then everybody takes a look and you view it and see if you think it's
working.
readable or confusing or.
Just number them all and put a music
And-
system,
and
people pay for parking, period.
then-
Say as long as you want, just pay for it.
Then
Yeah,
on page 5,
Confusing too.
um,
When I go to Patchogue,
on,
it's like,
on page 5,
I go to the meter and it
1,
goes, no.
for overnight parking permit,
meter required. I'm like,
this is a little confusing to me, because this is kind of what we had in the other back parking lot. So we have overnight parking permits from 6 PM, and they need to be out by 8:30 in the morning, right? So I park in a spot, I'm allowed to park there for 3 hours, so I'm now parking at 3 and not leaving till 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
How are we preventing that from happening?
Well, this is.
Or if it's an unlimited spot, are they ever moving their car?
Because some of
So
those
can they leave it
spots
for a week?
are gonna be 7 AM to 11 PM. And that alleviates the problem
But
because
that's not what you're saying in the study, because.
I didn't say that in the study. I'm
We
saying
didn't- we
this
didn't
is
say
what we
anything in the
addressed
study.
to to solve some of those problems.
So
Was
it-
changing the time from 7 AM to 11 PM.
So in all of these unlimited spots, you can now park from 7 AM to 11 PM?
Anytime, you can park
No, you
in the
can park there
unrestricted
anytime.
parts
Those are,
anytime.
park there anytime. There's never a
But,
limit. on it.
okay, so then what do I need an overnight parking permit for?
That is the recommendation of this, not the recommendation of.
But it is a recommendation of you guys too, right? That
No,
you
no,
have
no, no, that- we
over-
just-
So
that
you're
was- that
eliminating
was-
overnight parking permits
No, that was
altogether?
part, yeah, that was just part of some of the future considerations in our, in
Well-
other words, really, the item 1 in our recommendation, the first one, the parking, that's really today. Items 2 about future parking and about future considerations, that's all for the future. We just want to let you know that as a committee, we're looking at these issues also, and we're giving you our initial input as these are studied further in the future, what our position is on those, or what our feelings are.
So
So
you're-
that's down the road.
So you're just, this parking study came up with overnight parking permits and employee parking program, and you're saying none of that?
Not right now, in the future, yeah.
So then this is where part of the issue comes in, is all of these spots here, then people can just leave their car in for 2-3 weeks? There's no turnover?
Yeah, there's no turnover now.
And unrestricted. I
It's-
mean,
So you have
there are-
400 spots downtown with no turnover, or whatever the number of green spots, no turnover, ever.
I can tell you that there are apartments
So
downtown.
where's the employees parking then?
I can tell you that
Well, they're not
downtown, we
gonna
have a lot of
leave their
Coast
car
Guard
there
people
permanently.
living downtown that are on leave for 3 days, where they leave their car here and then they hop in somebody else's car and go to the Coast Guard station, and, you know, so there are people that travel, that live downtown, that get on a plane and go somewhere to go to work for a couple of days and then come back, so that's why I
For the
think.
most part, people will get up in the morning and go to work, and
Yeah,
that space would
for
be
the most
empty,
part.
so that's
There's a
practical
few that'll
reality,
leave 'em
but
there
there
for
will be
long
some that,
term.
you know.
Every now and then you can have somebody park their car, it breaks down, it's gonna be there for 2 or 3 weeks. I don't see it being an epidemic where all 400 spots are gonna be.
Again, it's a work in
I'm
progress.
just saying, this is a recommendation for the study, so we're ignoring employee permits and overnight parking.
At this
At
current
this
moment,
point.
because the
Yeah.
employee permits is going to, there's a shuttle component, there's some things that we're not really ready to do yet, but that's why this is a plan for the future, it's not a plan for everything right now.
So there's really, these green spots are for apartment buildings and employees. That's what these green spots are for. And this is gonna address all of that.
Essentially, I think
Well,
that's the recommendation.
you have
of what
to
we
understand
did.
that the other spaces, all of the other spaces,
Or 3
after
hours or
11
less.
o'clock at night to 7 in the morning, somebody who lives in an apartment can park there overnight, because the regulation is only from 7 AM to 11 AM. So realistically, if somebody gets home and they park there and that's why we pushed it to 11.
8:01.
So if they get home after 8 o'clock, after which time most of the restaurant people have come and found parking spaces to go to the restaurant, if they park there at 8:30, they could stay there until 11 o'clock, 7, 8, 9, till 10 o'clock the next morning. They're not gonna get ticketed. It's just saying that during those hours, from 7 to 11, that's when the restriction is applied. After that, they could park overnight. Somebody from Summerlin could park in these blue spots if they get home at 9 o'clock at night and they leave 9 o'clock the next morning, they're fine.
So you want the ticketing from 7 AM till 11 o'clock at night, you want everybody ticketed?
Monday to Friday, correct.
In the restricted zones.
Restricted,
Correct.
that's right. In the
Correct.
blue and the pink. The blue and the
We
pink are
don't
the
want
only
them
ones that.
ticketed, we just want them to comply.
But,
Dave,
Had a way to
you don't
put
want
it.
them all ticketed.
All about compliance.
That's exactly right.
and then also the matter of one ticket is $50 and 2 offenses, and then another ticket is $100, so that's out.
So that's,
That's
what we
confusing.
already
How was
have
it keep up with that?
some of that in
But it
play.
doesn't matter, because we don't have employees, and we don't know who an employee is.
Yes, ultimately, we would
That's-
implement this if necessary, it's, a recommendation for the future, I don't think.
But
it
that's what I'm
makes-
saying,
we
so-
talked about the shuttles right now, there's just not enough there to warrant a shuttle for an employee.
Right.
It wouldn't make sense.
But if we're using these for recommendations for the future, this doesn't coincide with anything that we're doing, so how do we
Well, I think-
take what this is and then eventually go back to what
I
this plan is?
Still think it works if you wanted it to, because you could use this now, and then as you do your 6 months analysis, you can change it, and then you're gonna come to the trigger point, where you're gonna say, you know what? The
We need a
businesses
parking garage.
downtown maybe we get a parking garage, maybe the businesses downtown to get together, we have a shuttle, and then we work the shuttle, and then we do the employee permitting, and now we have the basis that gives you the basis to do that,
Mhm.
and the way to move in a direction.
Are those all your questions?
Right, I mean, right, there's no overnight fix, but you certainly got a good foundation and a good idea. But
Yeah.
the idea is you're gonna change your mind a couple hundred times, and we're gonna put different signs up in different zones, it's gonna have to be a living document.
So
A lot
the
of,
only
lot
thing
of those
with-
recommendations that are in this, really in our minds as a committee, a lot of them are more long-term, like extending
Sure
the
it is.
parking district and transportation-oriented development
You
by
mean
the
from
railroad
this?
and relooking at all
It's
that.
strategic.
So
Yeah.
the only thing
Yeah,
we're
but it
really
should be
doing is
long-term.
adding more 3-hour parking. I mean, that's really all we're doing, is adding more 3-hour spots like we did in the south parking lot.
And
correct?
restricting some to 15
Right.
minutes for the
But that's-
businesses, for
Well,
people
no, the
living
15
there.
minutes ones we already have here.
It gives you,
One window.
it's
So-
the same premise,
One,
it's
right.
just a little less.
That's what I'm saying,
detail.
so,
Same
so,
premise.
so,
Move
but
the
all we're
longer
doing is
people
adding
far
more
out.
3-hour parking like we did in this back parking lot here, right? This is the same as we had previously, so all we're doing is adding some 3-hour restricted spots here, that's it, right?
Main Street,
Yeah, I mean, the Main Street went to an hour.
Yeah, that's all this is doing,
I
it's
mean,
not
some of the-
changing anything else.
Exactly, because some of the things that were done already were logistically thought of. I mean, especially on the riverfront
Not to
lot.
diminish the work that you
was-
did
And
on
that was
this.
based
No,
on.
no, but,
Yeah.
but I'm just
Well,
saying,
And that
that's,
was based
that's.
on the businesses. The
but
businesses,
I'm
were
not
the ones that
diminishing it, I'm
drove
just,
that.
I'm
That's
just
exactly
saying.
what it sounds
Well,
like.
I don't mean to be doing that, but all I'm saying
Smells
is,
coming out.
but in reality, we're just increasing some 3-hour spots is what we're doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
just
that's-
for the duration.
For the duration of the 6 months, to
The
see how it is, and then we'll get
recommendations-
the parameters and see if it's working.
Right,
And you've also
recommendations.
added a lot more
I mean,
unrestricted.
if you look at our parking code now.
No, cause it's all unrestricted pretty much now in those parking lots.
I mean, how many,
The back
every,
north
probably
parking
every
lot
town
doesn't
board
have
meeting, there's
restrictions on
a
it, right,
resolution
at all.
of just parking.
Everybody on
It
the
does
parking
behind
committee,
bars.
Does.
everybody
does.
that's on the parking committee would
They're
like to have
color-coded, they're posted.
great
Oh, yeah.
development up by the railroad, all of the DC zones reviewed and updated, a parking garage here and all of that. We'd love to have that, if you could just budget that and do it next year, we'd love
Okay,
it.
here's-
But right now,
here's 14
all we
million,
want
get
is this,
started.
is we wanna manage our current parking so that it works better for downtown. That's all we're looking to do at this point.
Just something I wanted to add that wasn't mentioned earlier when we talked about how much this was and where the money came from. I believe $15,000 came from David Gallo and the River Loss.
Yep,
To
Some of
be
the-
kicked in to pay,
some of the
help
money
pay.
I thought it was 7,500.
That was for the parking though, for the redo the parking lot,
15
correct?
is coming, is,
No.
No,
is
that
It
adding.
was for
the study.
the plan.
Just go into the first alteration.
Yeah, I think that not
Oh,
for the
they
not
changed
for the
that.
study, it was the bid
Okay,
and,
originally
yeah.
it was for the
And
study,
he's
okay,
It
also,
was.
okay.
he's
Because we
also
didn't have the
pledged
match.
another 7,500 for the application that we just made for the lights along the boardwalk too. so.
Okay. Good.
So I'm just gonna go back, so a couple of the things from the, and if I sound like I'm diminishing it, I'm not. I think that this, I think that this, when this rolls out with the enforcement and then gathering the data, I think is
The
important.
wayward signs is gonna be
And
beautiful.
yeah, I think
It's
that
gonna
that's
look-
what needs to happen, but I
nobody
just
will
wanted
come
to.
downtown. They'll all go to
The other thing is for the portion about, establishing parking policies and regulations that prepare for an increase in residential parking demand and guide development patterns in the future. And that was part of the study that we had requested. And when we went to for the maximum and the minimum requirements for the residential development with fee in lieu of parking policy, I thought part of this was to also how much parking needed to be on-site versus all in lieu of a parking, pilot. So where did that end up?
I don't know
No,
if you
it-
can do
it-
that because of the lot configuration, like
But I
every
thought
lot's gonna be
originally
different.
that when this was first discussed and when it first came out, that 2/3 would be required on site, or are we allowing no parking in an apartment building and it can all be done as pilot?
That's correct, because
Well,
what
not-
happens.
can I just,
I-
can I
I don't-
finish,
As far as,
please?
I was
Thank
on the
you.
committee part,
I
I'm sorry.
think, I think that an actual percentage is impractical because each lot and the way it's accessed currently is different. So for instance, you may have no ability to get any parking on site, so you would have,
But I think that the part of that discussion was if it was an existing building, then that was understandable. But if somebody's developing a whole new building, we're requiring 0 parking from them and just a pilot payment for all of the parking that's required under these numbers.
we can ask them to look at that. I think we currently require no parking.
From the
So
parking
that's-
committees,
And then, so the pileup was in lieu of that.
So-
And if we can ask them to give
Is-
us a percentage, I just think it would be very hard because even if you knock down an existing building, you could still have a very constrained lot. And so if they're gonna do residential development, even if it's a couple of apartments above, to give it a percentage would be, we can
Well,
ask them.
then
in
that
some
being,
way.
that being said, then I think that the study does recommend a minimum of 0.5 and a maximum of 1, and for a 2-bedroom, a 1 and a 1.25, right?
Right.
For a 2-bedroom, so I think if we're gonna go, and I think you guys are recommending 0.75 for a 1-bedroom, right? So I think there's a couple issues that I have with that. If they're not providing any parking, then are we at the maximum that they need to do if it's all a part of a pilot?
That's something
I
to
think
look
that
at,
needs
yeah.
to be considered, because somebody's not gonna have a half a car. And I know we're trying to go to the transit-oriented development, but I just don't know if Long Islanders are ready to live without their cars at this point, and unfortunately, we have to accommodate for that. And then the other question I have is, if and when we do go to employee parking or overnight parking, how are we going to regulate the number of permits that they get? Is it going to be per apartment building? So if you have a studio and you have one, can you, can you only get one residential sticker and not, if you're in a studio, 2 people?
Get 0.5 of a sticker.
You can.
I think that's,
Motorcycles, that's it.
that's,
Yeah.
when, we'll cross that bridge when we get there, but I just wanna also point out that the parking that would be created in these buildings would be required to be shared. So it wouldn't just be private parking for these people. So the
No, I understand that.
objective is to not create more parking than is necessary. So, I just wanna point that out, cause I don't know
Appreciate
if
that.
everybody.
And
I think it's timing though,
Understand.
I
Yeah.
think that this is the thing that we don't know, right? So
Yeah.
if we have residential people coming in, is their timing normally around 5 or 6 o'clock? And then they're doubling up as we develop, wet uses in downtown? Or are we, just, off the bat, oh, no one's coming home till 9 o'clock? So what's that crossover period that we have? And as we develop more downtown with wet
Yeah.
uses, your need in the evening is going to be greater.
Increase.
And
Yeah.
weekends.
And as you're getting toward, as you're moving, and it's gotta be a living document here, you're gonna be, working your way through, and as you cross those bridges, but the nice part about this is that you're already thinking ahead
Right.
of ways you could solve
We
problems
don't have
that
a
we don't
crystal
have.
ball,
So
but
we hope
you
we
try
have
to.
these, but we're a little bit ahead of the game, I think, in this way,
Well, that's something I
that's-
certainly I wanna look long-term, and
Yeah.
that's a concern about not requiring parking, because long-term, I think it's gonna all catch up with us at the
That's
end.
right.
And that's one thing that I think you may not have been at the table when we discussed it. The parking committee has discussed that in detail. Our feeling is that you cannot require people to provide a minimum percentage of parking on site in the parking district, because there are some lots that it's impossible to do so. It's physically, dimensionally impossible to do that.
Well,
When
that's
we
if they're doing
evaluated
full
that, and we
build-out.
looked at it, we see, and that's why we also like the incentive,
they
the
can.
additional height, if you can provide more parking on-site. Because all of these things become a win-win. It's a win for the developer if he can still develop his property, even though he cannot fit parking on it. And it's a win for the parking district, because he's gotta pay $10,000 a space, which is real dollars. So, to look at it as a strict, it's gotta be 60%, that doesn't work. You really want it to be a sort of a structured, program that is a working tool that a developer can work with. They could say, okay, I'm not gonna, hey, I'm gonna do so many units, I'm not gonna provide any parking, but I'm gonna provide, $10,000 a car, I'm gonna do 100 units, I'm gonna give you $1 million.
But
Great.
that's
I
where
don't
the
think-
realistic part
But I
has
don't
to
think
come
it's
in.
a win-win for the people who live in the town at some point, who are coming to town, and these, if the developers are not required to do parking, and the residential is taking up all the parking at some point. So,
But that would be shared parking in the residential too. If they built parking in their building during the day, when those people are theoretically at work, those parking stalls would be available for the public.
That's right.
Right, but you also have
And-
residential on the first floor for all of those buildings also, so that has to be accommodated for somewhere, because there'll be, there'll be,
Commercial, you mean?
Yeah,
restaurants and everything
sure.
else, so, that parking,
That's what it
will
would be
be,
for,
will
for
be
those-
shared for that
for
too,
those
so it's,
people, yeah.
there's an increase in the need as well.
Oh, no
But
doubt,
due to
that's
the-
what this
due
is
to
all
that-
about, increasing,
due to that.
understanding we have an increasing need, how are we gonna
Right.
address it?
Well, as we grow, we're gonna have to deal with the
amend the code
issues.
because we don't require shared parking. Correct
Right.
me if I'm wrong, but the recent developments that have occurred downtown have not
They restrict
constructed
them.
their parking as, quote, shared parking. They
Correct.
haven't.
They're actually charging for the spaces, which is going to probably
Exactly.
leave empty stalls underneath
Right.
buildings, because people can't afford to pay the $200 a month to have a parking space. And then they're gonna be parking outside the building, so whether they're providing the parking or not, if the building is providing the parking, they're still gonna be charging for those spaces.
So I think it really behooves the town board to seriously consider a payment in lieu of parking wherein you can require a certain number of parking. So, as you point out, you do have some spaces for residents or the
Right.
business. Another portion of the pilot being reducing the fee for a percentage of shared parking created, benefiting the parking district. And then the ultimate would be a parking improvement fund dedicated to receive revenue in lieu of payments. The fund can be used to enhance public parking facilities in the DC1 zoning district and zoning districts proximate to DC1, as you recommended. You can satisfy parking demand, you can purchase property, you can construct facilities with it, you can use it for planning, feasibility, environmental studies, engineering, architectural, and police enforcement. So, I mean, I think you're really at the point that you really should consider a pilot. You can take these recommendations, which do recommend it at this point in time, and I think the town board could have a meeting of the mind and take all the points all the town board members made and put it into the pilot payment, and it would go hand in hand with the recommendations that Marty laid out. I mean, I just.
I think it's, I
Good
think, I
summary, thank you
agree.
very much.
I like that.
I agree,
Perfect.
and I think that it's, you know, Chief is
Good
very
job.
good at putting together schedules for resolutions to depict, you know, the 1 hour, the 3 hour, the 15-minute parking, to put that resolution together, and then also go to public hearing on the pilot payments, and do that now, before we have to do the master plan and update the DC1 zoning. And I agree with you in extending the DC1 zoning, and I think it should even go a little bit further into Polish Town.
Well, that's why, truthfully, if we word the pilot payment, that we can expand, you know, you can address that
Yeah,
in the future.
sure.
Um,
And I don't think that any of that
Right.
really requires secret, does it, if you
You
put
gotta do
pilot
secret,
in?
yeah,
Oh, you do?
yes.
You need a full
Yeah,
secret?
but I think because in part, we have a strategic plan performed by experts based upon field work that they did. We have comments and recommendations of the parking district, which is hands-on. They're really, even if the quote implementation deviates slightly on the parking times, I think the town board as a whole could agree that a large percentage of the recommendations are appropriate and could go into place. We do it for 6 months. So anyway, I think you could do the pileup and the adoption of the strategic plan at the same time,
Yeah.
if you wanted.
Good.
You could do that with the 6 month?
No, the 6 months, that's an enforcement. I mean,
All right.
The pilot would be in perpetuity.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about this.
The good thing about that is
I
it's
can change the
literally-
law. I mean, I'm gonna have to do the code amendments anyway, right?
Chief, you're
So-
off the hook.
Well,
But
well,
also, once you have once you have this in place, making the adjustments in 6 months is literally just restriping the color of stalls.
Right.
It's not, it's, you don't have to redo, let's say, okay, let's restripe this bank, 3 hours, boom, get out there and stripe it, you're done.
But this is kind of where I was talking about the parameters, right? So if we're gonna collect this data over the next 6 months, what is it that we're looking for? Are we looking to see that, like, how often these lots are turning over?
Yeah.
Are we looking, you know, what is the goal of what we're looking to see? Because if in 6 months we find this is completely full all the time again,
Then it's gonna need an adjustment.
yeah,
Well,
so, I mean, so are we looking for counts, and, you know, just so we know when we, like, if, this is not to answer right now, but if the parking district could come up with some parameters of what it is that they would like to see as an outcome from changing anything, right?
Very easy, drive through the parking lot.
Yeah.
Well, and
Right. Really, I mean,
yeah,
it's
I think
obvious.
that certainly
Put
the
a
committee's
tollway
gonna
zone
have a
sign
real
on it.
feel for what their experience is as a business
Yeah.
owner, but also if there are objective criteria that you think would be helpful in making those decisions when you have to make them, then, I mean, using our interns last summer was really optimum.
Yeah,
That's what I'm
great.
saying, yeah.
They did, you know, they do our
Survey.
inventory, but they got out and they went around and they used the sheets that Jane gave them and they collected all the information and didn't cost us, it was a great way to save money and get more data than we could afford to pay for originally, so.
And
we
I
could,
thought we
we
were
could
gonna
do, I'm sure they'd be
supplement
happy
that
to
with
get
a
out and walk
survey.
around
Well,
downtown
Yes.
and write down.
Right.
When there's a public hearing also, to get the word out to all the businesses and everybody, to get as many people
Well, the
to,
public
you know,
hearing would be to implement the changes, but
Right.
really, I'm talking about the recommendation of this one being
How
the
is it
6-month
working?
pilot,
How's it
right?
working?
Right.
So,
How's it
I mean,
working?
the whole
Right.
thing of this is to improve the,
Right.
the ability for people to
Exactly.
get to work and to
Right.
be able to get downtown and utilize downtown,
Right.
so.
And that point
And
could be
the
made.
interns could walk
Right.
around with a survey to the businesses, how
Right.
is it working, do you see any improvement, do you see, you know, whatever it is, and then just collect that information and give it back to you.
Just one last thought. Tim, I see that you have a great committee. I see that how many really good people are on
They
there.
really are.
I know that they've put a lot of time and effort in, and just a thought, because we are talking about people that come into, they are all business owners downtown though. It'd be good to have a couple residents on the committee, people who are just coming in, you know, and might look at things from a different perspective. Also, since there's such concerns out within the community about parking, it might be good to have a couple community people on there that, you know, are just people that are coming to downtown to enjoy the downtown.
I think you can, I
Not
think your, bylaws, you could, you know, you could.
Bob Hartman
You know what I
is
would
a
like to
resident
do,
downtown,
yeah,
I
isn't
think
he?
it's.
I'll sit on
Even
it.
just
I'd
like
like to
seniors.
email everybody,
Isn't
because
he a
we
resident
don't
downtown?
have, we don't
He
have full
resigned, though.
participation from the list.
And maybe
Like
find
John
out who
has,
doesn't
John
want it.
hasn't been involved in a while, and neither
Since
is
he's
Bobby.
not here anymore.
So we'll shoot out an email and to everybody that's on the committee and say, look, could you respond and let us know if you're going to participate? Cause I think we may be able to open up a few, 2 to 4 spots right off the bat.
Maybe just get a few community leaders
Yeah.
in on there who might help with PR and such.
And I think maybe somebody from, a couple people from the seniors committee, because they, you know, definitely have sometimes
They need more handicaps.
strong
Yeah.
opinion.
I mean, I didn't really see any handicap
Joe
parking
does.
on here either, so.
Well, by law,
Yeah, I mean, that's.
It's
yeah,
by law, that'll be
yeah,
done
it's-
by
there'll
the
be- there'll be
percentage of what's
handicaps
there.
in there, it's just, this is more about the
Handicap
durations
will
and
be the
stuff.
handicap that's there now.
And then one other thing from the,
Andy and Tony would like to
parking district and from the committee. If you guys could just take a look at, I know in this study there was about alternate, if, as parking does expand out a little bit, alternate ways for people to get into town that are further away. Any recommendations from the committee as far as how to address those issues? Would be helpful, because I think as time goes on, and if we could start thinking about it now, it might be helpful for the future.
There are there's some recommendations on bike
Yeah.
share and things like that that could be implemented too, so we could always take a look at those. You can Anne ran a bicycle belt for two.
Oh,
Anne Marie, you could bike to work.
I know.
You're close
I
enough.
know.
Jim, you too.
I used to
I
ride
could
my
bike
bike
to
to
work.
work.
I used
Then
to
I got
walk
caught in
to
a
work, and then I'd
rainstorm.
get here and have to run out somewhere, and I'd have to run home and get my car.
The work was sweaty in the hot summer sun.
No, I'm not doing
No.
it.
Well, thank you very much, this
Yeah,
is
thank
very
you.
informative. Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you, Marty.
Anne
Thank
Marie.
you.
Thank you,
Work,
Chief.
and,
Thank you, Dawn.
next time, all you did is sit there
So
with draw
is
colors, is all
there
you did.
town board consensus to, move forward with the adopt on the strategic plan? I could do a draft on the pileup. And then, cause we're gonna have to undertake secra on those, so.
Yep.
Good?
Good?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect,
Yeah.
great, thank you.
Yeah, get that done sometime this year, will you?
Next horse we can beat to death, come on up.
Yeah, let's take the next one.
It's our job. It's our job.
The Vistas abating,
We're not here to
Hollow.
just sit with rubber stamps.
Nobody ever sits with a rubber stamp, I don't know where that came from.
Are you a little sensitive? I wasn't
Because
talking
it's a
about
stupid
anybody in
comment.
particular.
No, you're making a
How are you?
statement that it gives something to do.
No, I didn't mean that at all.
That's it, where's Renee? Okay.
all right, we are on TV, so I'm gonna have all of you introduce yourselves. This is the microphone. Would you guys like to start?
Good afternoon, Russell Moore from the Vistas of Bating Hollow.
Chris Kent, on behalf of the Vistas of Baden Hollow.
Meredith Black from the Benjamin Companies on behalf of the Vistas. Danielle Rizzo from the Benjamin Companies.
On behalf of.
Just have to speak louder,
Sorry.
the
On behalf
microphones
of
are here
the
and.
Vistas of Baden Hollow.
You all represent the same
Yeah.
people?
We do.
Oh, how's your laugh? Okay.
So the reason we're here, you probably know. Let me just take you back just a couple of years. We came in for a site plan approval to finish the last phase of the Vistas, of the Bluffs Knowles project, which was permitted 300 condominium units on 47 acres that were clustered from the golf course. One of the conditions in final site plan approval that was recommended by council to the planning board was to modify the special permit that was granted in 1982 from 300 condominium units down to 277 units.
Can I
So-
just backtrack for 1 second? The 47 acres and the golf course, that was one whole parcel to begin with and separated out, is
Yes.
that correct?
So I'm gonna have Meredith start by handing out, what we're gonna call a PowerPoint, but it's really just we're not doing it by PowerPoint. So we'll hand it out, it will give you all the history of what the golf course parcel originally was.
So I think if we could maybe backtrack, I know that this board and other town boards and committees have received a lot of information over the years on this particular property. There's been a lot of development. So what we tried to do is take it back in time and kind of simplify the facts so that, we have extras we can.
Yeah, thank you.
So that we could just be on the same page with everyone. I mean, we're intimately involved with it, having been the developers for so long on this, but because it was a phased development, it is confusing to follow the moving parts as you go. Even if you get a document that's 50 pages long that has it, it's difficult to read at times. So we thought we'd just simplify it and map it out for you. So the first page that you have here is essentially the initial development site, which was 191 acres. At that time, it had the golf course and then other open space on it, although it was not constrained by any conservation easements of the sort at that time. So when the original applicant came in,
Who was the original applicant for the whole 191 acres?
Correct.
Flag Hill
Who
Development.
was it?
Riverhead.
Riverhead Flag Corporation.
Riverhead Flag Corporation, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
There were 5 partners at Flag Hill.
So they own the entirety of the 191 acres. And at the time when they came in, what was done is there was a yield map that was an analysis of the overall 191 acres to look at how much development could be done on this particular acreage. And I guess after going through it with the town and looking at that, the conclusion was they could get approximately 300 or just above that residential homes on the overall 191 acres.
But
And-
they had applied for a lot more, didn't they?
No, what happened was the original application was in fact for 300 condominium developments, cluster developments. So what happened is they did the yield map, and that's reflected in the special permit in the resolution, and it goes through some of that history to reflect the fact that the reason the town board at the time looked at and approved 300 was because if they didn't cluster the development, the developer would have had as-of-right development rights to 300 plus units. It doesn't specify
300
exactly how
plus.
many over
Single
300,
family.
but, sorry, single-family units, and that would have taken up the entire 191
Yep.
acres there. So rather than doing that, what the town and the applicant decided at that time was to agree to a number of 300 condominium units to be clustered on approximately 47 acres of this 191 acre site. The effect of that was the existing golf course, which included a restaurant at the time, and then they added on the right to include some other facilities, which we'll talk about. That particular area of the golf course then was constrained by a conservation easement, which restricted the ability to develop the golf course site because that was part of the quid pro quo of clustering the development on the northern half in those 47 acres.
So the special permit from 1982 included the 300 condos and the golf course restaurant.
Yes, and actually, if you turn to the next page, okay, what I tried to do on the next page is just break out, I think, what are some of the elements that people have been concerned with. So again, that's the restraint of the 300 condominium units, and I just quoted it right from the special permit rather than giving you an entire document, this section, so you could see that. So the 191 acres can prohibit further development on it other than the 300 unit condominiums, okay? And then it also prohibits residential development of the golf course with the following then quotes, development to be clustered along the Long Island Sound Bluff adjacent to Flag Golf Course. The use of the flag property for condominiums will preserve the open space of the existing golf course and remain undeveloped acreage as required by the covenants mentioned herein above, which will not impair the reasonable and orderly development of the property in the neighborhood. And then it further goes on to say the covenants and restrictions stating that the 191 acre parcel shall not be further improved shall be filed with the county clerk. The net effect of the special permit then was to essentially cluster the development, and as you'll see on the next page, or sorry, 2 pages later, you'll see that then you wind up with a map showing the golf course property and then the area that could be developed.
And this is still all owned by Flag.
All owned by Flag. All of this took place essentially from the 1982 original special permit, then led to a scenic easement in 1983, which was again reiterated in 1984. The effect of that scenic easement was again to restrict the development on the golf course portion and in fact limit the development of the golf course portion of the property.
That's on page 3 of the
That's
package.
just
Sorry,
back one page.
sorry, back one page.
Yeah, go back
I
one page.
apologize.
This is the pertinent, relevant information in the scenic easement.
Okay, so on the scenic easement there, it mentions that then the developer grants the town this recreational, scenic, and conservation use easement over the entire property and expressly then carves out the golf course for the scenic easement. It limits the overall development again to that 300 overall and limits development specifically on the golf course portion of the property to a golf club and golf course open to the public or private membership, the golf club and golf course facilities including but not limited to a restaurant, public or private, separate catering facilities and a tavern, jogging paths, cycling, riding paths, retail stores specializing in golf, tennis, and swimming equipment and apparel limited to not more than one of each store, and any other compatible recreational use. So then it essentially is looking again in the scenic easement to reiterate what the special permit constraint was, that the golf course would remain open space and be for recreational purposes, and the residential development would be clustered in that 47 acres.
Right.
Again, the owner consented to this at the time of the development.
Understood. So, the conservation easement over the golf course,
Yeah.
which says that you cannot do anything else other than these limited development on the golf course.
Correct.
Was predicated on the fact that 300 units would be built.
Yes, and
So if we're reducing it down to 277, is there a portion of the golf course that should be released of the conservation easement? Because the town is now taking back the special permit and saying, we're not giving you 300,
Well, let's
we're only
walk
giving
step
you
by,
277?
let's take it step by step, because this wasn't just a jump from 300 to 270 without any quid pro quo or discussion along the way. So I think that we just gotta walk through the history here to understand that, because I
Okay.
agree, developers aren't likely to give up development rights without something along the way having
Exactly.
encouraged them to do that. So let's take a look at what happened here, okay? So we had those 300, so we wind up essentially with our special permit. The net effect of that was it went to site planning then, where the town board basically said, we're going to allow the developer to come in and seek site plan applications for these condominiums and phase the development. So we had condominium 1, which we're all familiar with, Bluffs 1, which is the pink colored, and then at the same time, they created that recreational portion to provide a pool to the condominium owners, because the golf course, again, they didn't require membership be given to condominium owners, nor did they require that the condominium owners have use of those facilities. So when they gave the first site plan, they said we need some recreational space for our condominium users, hence we have those two little parcels there. One is solid is the condominiums, the one that's dashed is their pool and tennis court, okay? So that was 126 of the 300 units was allocated to that particular portion of the site. And the site planning, all the constraints that go with that. The next section then, so that left us approximately 36 plus or minus acres then of the cluster development area to develop. So the next part was the developer was able to retain 174 condominium units over that particular remaining acreage. What they did next then is they took that acreage, that's 37 acres, and they broke it into condominium 2. Condominium 2 in 1986, the town board granted site plan approval for Bluffs 2, which was 174 condominium units. There was a change of ownership then in terms of the Bluffs 2 ownership as well as the remaining parcels, which is the site that is the current subject of our application, as well as what came to be known as the golf course villas.
How many owners are there now? And
So-
who owns what?
Okay, so right now, we own the golf course villas as well as
No,
the,
no, no.
sorry, you wanna fill in?
Right now, the Knowles and Fox Hill Inc. is the
Sorry.
owner of the only vacant parcel on the 47 acres, which is 8.08 acres.
That's on the,
That's on the south side
that's on the
of
south
Fox,
side of the road,
of Fox
going
Hill.
up to Giorgio's.
and the north side, because it includes the easement where the golf cart storage barn is.
So this yellow and this site where it says yellow and it says site, is owned by the same owner, which is,
The yellow
Bluffs
is
two.
owned, no, so let's start with the pink. On the right-hand
Okay.
side, you have the Bluffs at Baiting Hollow,
so
which is
that,
hundred and 26 units.
and who is that owned by?
The condominium.
So,
It's easier if you look
It's
at
a
it in this
condominium.
color.
so let's go to the very last.
The very last page kind of is
Uh,
easier to.
The very last page here actually has them all color coded, so we can all talk about them in
Okay.
a way that makes sense. And let's.
Right, so
just-
if you start with the pink, it's the Bluffs at Baiting Hollow condominium.
Okay,
That's the owner. Then you have in the yellow, you have the various condominiums, condominium 1, condominium 2, 1A and 1B, 2A and 2B, 3A and 3B. Those are all separate condominiums with a master association. The green is known as the section, is Fox Hill 4, Phase 4, that's condominium 4. And then the blue is the 8.08 acres owned by the Knolls of Fox Hill, Inc. And the hashed area in the center is the pool and tennis court, which is owned by the Bluffs at Baiting Hollow Homeowners Association.
okay.
So the green is what?
The green is condominium 4.
It's Fairway Bill as is publicly
It's
referred
built.
to it.
Yeah, no, I know,
That's
but
16 units
that's what I wanted to say.
completed.
Okay.
Completed.
So, what I'm seeing is that you have the Bluffs at Baiting Hollow, which owns one piece of this. Then you have the Knolls of Fox Hill that owns the yellow, the green, and the blue,
Various condominiums, yes.
okay? And then, who owns
The
the golf
blue is
course?
us, the blue is us.
The blue is a
The blue is
different owner.
Knolls of Fox Hill, Inc. The
So
green is condominium 4.
Okay, but,
So each of the condominium developments are actually owned by the condominium, unit owners themselves, okay? So when the condominium was formed, the developer came in, they had the units, they sold them. The developer is in so long as there's a unit that's still unsold. Once the last unit is sold, the developer steps back out of it. All those condominium owners become an apportioned owner to that underlying fee. By doing a phased site plan, those condominiums were broken into separate and specific site plans that each needed individual approval by the town as well as the state attorney general in approving their condo plan and the condo map.
I've filed about 50 condo maps in my career, so I understand what you're talking about. But when you're talking about separating out a condominium map from an overall piece, and you're leaving a piece, you know, normally what would be done is a subdivision, to subdivide out the
So-
piece that is where you're going to be building the units, and then the piece that's left over.
So with respect to how the process took place, I believe that the original owner, River Flag Hill, the one who agreed to the constraints to begin with. So let's start, again, the reason we took a step back to the beginning of this is the original special permit dealt with the entirety of the property.
Yep.
Right? And so the constraint that they agreed to put on it was to divide the property into a developable section and a non-developable section.
And that's the cluster development area.
Correct.
Yeah.
So only 300 units, living dwellings can be developed there.
And they
In
can only
the
be developed
clustered-
in the clustered area.
Right, not on the golf course area, and
And the
that's.
golf course was subject
But
to
all the way up from the
restrictions
road up
by-
here,
Yeah.
all of this, what's out here,
Yes.
correct?
Correct.
All right,
correct.
so you have 16 here,
16 there.
But it's easiest on the
So,
last page, it shows
Yeah,
you.
where you can see that color coding.
but I mean, the number of units, right?
Yeah,
So you have
16 on the green.
16
There's
here,
16 here, there's 108 up here,
there's a,
In
no,
the yellow.
You have to go.
126
there's 108.
So this-
here, 126 over here.
Can you, when you say over here, over there,
Yeah,
can you
I'll
Pink is
refer to
126.
colors?
How
The
much-
Bluffs-
how much is in the
The
pink?
Bluffs
So
are-
in the pink is,
126.
pink is 126 units,
Okay, and how many are in the yellow?
108 units.
And then there's 16 in the green.
Correct.
Correct.
And
And then
the
the new one
subject
is
site, the
27.
subject site, it is an existing 6-unit building, and the planning board has approved 21 additional units, which have also been approved by the health department.
The
as
total
far
in the
as
blue
growth.
will be 27 units.
And there's 6 now, right? There's
Six
now?
existing.
6
Yeah, 'cause I
existing,
remember those were-
21 new.
I remember those models.
Those
Yeah,
were
right.
models originally.
That's what I
And those are
remember.
all CO'd and
Yeah.
had tenants for
I
many,
used
many
to
years.
party over there.
So, and the golf course, to answer an earlier question, is owned by Soundview Associates.
They also own the Giorgio's Catering Hall, which is on the golf
Which is
course
leased
parcel.
to the catering
Right.
hall.
So, the golf course now owns the golf course and the catering hall, correct?
The catering hall is on the golf course premises, is on the
Okay.
property that's the golf course property.
Giorgio's is on the golf course property.
But they lease that
But
property.
they lease the building.
Right.
They lease the building from the golf course.
That property is owned by Soundview
From Soundview,
Associates.
Okay.
Soundview Associates owns that entire piece, which is now 154
Right.
acres according to ArcGIS.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. They added the 11 acres later. Yeah.
Right.
So-
Is the catering facility within this area?
Golf course.
It's on the golf course
Golf course.
property.
Okay, so it's not in this cluster development area, it's
No.
here?
Correct.
It's just south of the
The
line
pink.
of the
Pink,
cluster.
it's right here,
area.
I can see it, there it is.
Right by the
There's a
nice
little
sleigh
golf
ride.
cart there, look.
That's kids.
Where do you see it, Jim? I don't see it on here.
It's not, you can't see it.
You can't see it, it's right here. It's just
Rich,
to the
where's your-
south of the pink.
Right
Yeah.
Okay, I thought Jim said he saw it on there, so.
Wanna show them the aerial?
Yeah, hold on a second, I have it right here. I have it right
Yeah.
here. I wasn't gonna disturb, I wasn't going to distract people with this yet.
People think we're easily distracted.
No, it's just too much information. I get it myself. So if you look at it here, this is, I want to get it so everybody can see here. So this is the catering hall. This is the golf course property, you know, kind of travels along here, comes down south of the road. And if you follow it on there,
Yeah.
it's a line that matches.
And it whips around the
Yeah, I know what, I
18th
mean,
Green,
that's-
yeah,
And
yeah.
it comes, and
Coming
then this
down
is
there.
the 16 units over here,
Right.
which are, you know, shaped like
green.
that. Yep.
So the Benjamin companies have been involved in the project since 1993. And we developed, you know, phases 1, 2, 3A, and ultimately sold off, 3A, 4, sold off 3B and sold off the southern parcel to the former golf course owner. We took this parcel back in 2013, and in approximately about 2015, we went to the planning board and made our application. And while it's been an uphill battle, we went through the process, we got through the health department. The original flow that was allocated to this site was 40, for the entire 174 units, which Benjamin purchased in 1993, was 40,800 gallons. And that was the restriction that we were going up against. And, you know,
How
when
many
we-
gallons?
40,800 gallons. So as the site got developed and the flow was being taken up, we had some decisions to make as far as can we meet the yield that was originally proposed for the entire parcel. And as Meredith said earlier, why would a developer give up the rights? And one of the things that we look back at prior to meeting today is looking at the groundwater management plan that was a covenant restriction against this property. And what it says is that if you exceed that 40,800, pardon?
The health department groundwater management plan is a covenant against the property, or it's just?
Yes.
There's a
It's a
groundwater
record-
management covenant recorded in 1999.
Okay,
Against the property, and what that says, that in the event that you exceed that 40,800, you have to build a sewage treatment plant.
Oh, Lord.
So at
No, it's
that juncture, when we were going through the planning process,
You don't wanna commit to doing that for everything?
we did not.
Hence your flow takes you to
Similar to other
277.
things that we've committed
I don't,
to
by the way, I don't
against
even
our
think,
better interest.
I don't think,
Hookup.
so bring us fast forward to when we were having the public hearings before the planning board, and all the condominium associations were attending the public hearing and voicing their concerns about density, about groundwater, about, none of them would have permitted a sewage treatment plant to be built up here, okay? I can tell you that. So what did you wanna walk through?
Right, so
Sorry,
we
you-
went,
You said the health department wouldn't permit a sewage treatment plant?
The health department would, but I don't think the condominium owners associations
Oh, I'm
would.
just talking about if the units were restricted because the special permit said 300 units.
Right.
So now you're reducing that by 23 units. If somebody wanted, and then the conservation easement, because the town is saying you can't build the 300 anymore, even though you put this conservation easement in place.
Yeah.
So if they were to take a piece equating to what the area would be for the 23 units, and somebody wanted to build a 23 units somewhere else as an offset, they could build a sewage treatment plant and build those 23 units.
But not within this 47 acres.
Not within the 47 acres,
So
but
that's what all
somewhere
we're trying to
else.
do.
let's backtrack a minute though, because I think you gotta start with the fact that there was a special permit with conditions placed on it,
Yep.
okay? And we're at 300.
Yep,
Each one of them then, the applicant had to come in for a site plan, and each one of those site plan permit approvals also had conditions placed on them. And they were agreed to by the applicant and agreed to by the town. When developer at that case who owned the balance of the 47 acres after condominium 1 was looking at what they could do with 174 units, and they came across a practical constraint, which was essentially a gallon per the flow issue here. Thank you, gallon per unit amount, daily flow here.
Said that the other week.
They looked at 174 units and said, it's not gonna happen based on the size of the units we want to put in. So what we're looking at is we're gonna modify our application and say we'll bring it down to 144 because we want some larger units. We wanna use that flow, and we understand that we're capped at that because of the development constraints. So the
Understood.
applicant, again, agreed to another restriction, which is how we got to the county groundwater management declaration here and covenant that's been recorded against the land, as well as site plan approval for 74 units and then 144. That included, again, the restriction that said, okay, the applicant has come in and agreed that they are going to reduce the overall development from 300 to 270. Again, restricted now by the flow issue. So when we looked at the next phase of development here, that's what we looked at. We looked at 144 units, and then again, we parsed them off in a way, phase development that we thought made sense. So we wound up with 108 in the yellow section, and then if you flip your page on the diagram, two pages later, you're gonna get to the green section, which is our 16 units villas that we have there, which ultimately left us with, how many units did we wind up with there? Now, thank you, 20 units, there we go.
20.
We're down to 20 units here.
So can I just go back
Yes.
just take one step back? So the developer came in at some point and agreed to reduce the overall number of units from 300 to 270.
At the planning board.
At the planning board, not an amendment of the special permit. And the reason they went down to 270 were two reasons. One was because of the types of units they were looking to develop, and two, because of the restriction placed by the health department, thinking that they could only develop, rather than 174 units in phase 2, they could only develop 144 units in phase 2. And if you read the declaration from the health department, it actually says you can build the single-family equivalent, or the residential equivalency of 144 units. And that's where they came up with the 40,800. But in the process of developing the units, some of the units fell below 1,200 square feet, which allowed you to reduce your flow from 300 gallons per day down to 225 gallons per day. So then when we went back and looked at this site, whether we should buy this property in foreclosure, this property went into foreclosure for non-payment of a mortgage. Russ and I looked at it and said, let's go back, let's do a calculation to see how many units you could actually build on that site pursuant to the health department's covenant. When we went back, we could build 21 more units there, based on the available flow from the health department.
And we already had 6 model units on that site.
And there were 6
Yes.
model
With a
units.
separate Speedy's permit.
So that then brought us.
21 more? Or
Yes, 21
including
more.
the 6?
21 more.
More than the 6.
So instead of building 14 more, which was what was permitted by the 270, we actually figured out we could do 21 more. So then we came back to the town and we met with the planning staff and we said, do you think we could do 21 more units here instead of 14 more units? They said, well, let's take a look, and that's how it started.
So it'll
We
be a
made
total of
application.
27 units in that area.
In that area,
When
which-
build-out's complete.
Correct.
that would
Which
be
brought
and
us
that
to
got us
277.
Okay.
Okay.
So those units are going in this area here?
Correct.
Yeah, it's actually on the,
It's
if you
on-
go to the
In the
blue,
blue.
the colored
The
map
last
is
page.
easier.
It's in the
Okay.
blue.
They like the colored maps.
Sorry.
I like
I'll
colored maps.
portion them off so you can see.
Yeah, it's the blue section.
Okay, and the blue includes then the shared easement road as well as the shared, maintenance garage area of the golf course.
So then another little give back that we did when we came into, with the last application for this site, a lot of the owners around the area said, well, you know, now we're getting so big, the pool is crowded, we don't have enough recreational area. So we made another concession and agreed to convey this portion, or dedicate it, we haven't conveyed it yet, we offered it for dedication to the condominium associations and allow for expansion of the recreational parcel. So now then, rather than just a pool and tennis courts, there'll be this area also that would be added to as common area for recreational purposes.
Which is
But
sub-
isn't that
which is
piece
subject-
leased
which-
to the
which is
golf
subject
course for
to
like
a
100
permanent
years?
easement.
That's what he's
Yep,
saying.
it's subject, not permanent, I don't think it's permanent, but it's long. Right now, this was the old golf course shed,
Okay,
the golf carts.
Yeah. that's what I
No
thought.
longer, the golf courts are no longer there, they're all down at the new clubhouse.
but is there a
So-
lease on that piece?
There is a lease.
So
No,
wait,
there
so
is no
There's
lease.
no
There-
easement from
I'm
the
told
original
there is a
golf.
lease.
There is no
There-
lease, no.
it's not, it's a license
No,
agreement.
there was
There's
formerly a
recorded-
lease,
there's-
there was
right.
formerly a
easement.
lease, there was
Yeah.
formerly a lease when The former owner of the golf club sold the golf club to Rugby LLC, who owned it for an interim period of time. The lease was extinguished and an easement was put in place.
So, right now, there's an easement for the golf course to use that piece?
As
Because
a
that's
ma-
what the homeowners told me
For
yesterday
parking
when
and
I met with them.
Golf cart storage.
They're
They,
they're
for
confused.
golf cart storage, for
confused.
maintenance of
Correct.
the
It's an
golf
easement.
carts
So-
in the building
It's a
for,
recorded easement, which we have a copy.
and who has to maintain that parking lot as per the new?
Soundview.
Soundview Associates, the owner of the golf course.
Okay, so you're assigning that property for use for the residents, and then Soundview has to maintain it?
No, wait, let's back up 1 minute, because things
It's a
have got,
confusing,
okay.
confusing
because-
issue.
So, wait,
How
can
is
I
that
back up?
happening?
There's different things going on here. What we have are several different issues that came up. One, it turns out that if we really wanna talk about the homeowners and their recreational use, the reason that we were asked to do the recreational dedication to them is their recreational facilities actually encroach over the property line onto our property, and they use it for walking and other things, as well as part of their pool and their pool deck. So what we looked at is we said, okay, the golf course could choose to extinguish the easement. We can't unilaterally choose to do that. However, there's property that goes beyond that easement area that the residents are looking to use for their recreational purposes and their pool and things that are already encroaching. So what we will do is this entire section will be the subject of a recreational easement, such that if and when Giorgio's or the golf course owner, whoever is the current lessee or rights holder with regard to that easement, should choose to extinguish those rights, it would revert to the HOA. It would not revert
And-
back for
and-
development
and
purposes.
Meredith, if I may,
Yes.
just understand also, you know, it was, while it was a concession, and they wanted to use, the HOA, when I say they, the HOA wanted to use this for parking and for crosswalks, whatever it may be, okay? And to work with the golf course on how that use would coordinate with their needs, okay? It was not a benefit for these new condominiums that have been proposed, okay, down on the southern parcel, to have the additional 4 acres, which are subject to an easement, which, as you can see, is quite complicated.
Who owns that now?
Which portion?
The Knolls of Fox Hill Inc.
Okay.
It's the 8.08 acres, which you see in the blue, includes this area.
Oh, that's what I
But,
thought, okay.
but
Goes
there
like
is, but there is an agreement between the Knolls and the golf course that they can use that property.
No, not to my knowledge.
Well, then why is the golf course using that property?
They have an easement to maintain it and to use it for golf course maintenance facilities.
Okay, so there is an agreement,
There's an easement.
an easement, okay, an
easement.
easement agreement.
The easement was
But the
granted,
easement is
the easement
different,
was,
that's why it's-
the
Is,
easement,
where do you have the easement?
I'm
yes,
sure we do have the easement.
The
yeah.
easement was
Yeah.
granted from the Knolls of Fox Hill Inc., who was the owner of the property, to Soundview or Rugby LLC at the time, for the use, at that time, it was being used for, as a starting hole, because remember, the first hole was up here. So this is where the starter was, the golf cart parking, and they would go up the hill and they would play golf. Now, it's just a maintenance facility, it's an easement that sits on the property for the use to be maintained by the golf course property, for the use of maintenance of the facility.
So, is the golf
was-
course brought in on the discussions that this parking lot is now going to be utilized by all the residents of the Knolls?
The residents don't have a right to use it so long as the easement is in place.
Correct.
The
So
easement
they
then
can't even
trumps
park
it-
there?
Correct.
Unless the golf course allows them to, they cannot.
Okay.
They can make
So
their own
what-
arrangements with the golf course.
Okay, so the benefit of the easement to the owners of Fox Hill, of the Knolls, is if the 100-year lease agreement with the golf course ever expires
No.
or they
No
abandon
lease
it?
agreement.
No.
Or the easement?
The easement gets, if they stop, exercising their rights under the
I mean,
easement.
Jody, to be honest with you, that's a whole separate discussion.
Isn't that in litigation right now, back and forth between,
I have no personal knowledge of it, I've been told of that, but the issue at hand is that we have 8.08 acres. We've asked for 7 more units.
I was gonna say, this is so
It's a,
far
it's a
from what you're
sidebar,
here
it's a
for.
sidebar
but I
discussion.
just,
It has
but
nothing
I
to do
just
with
don't
me.
like the fact
We
that the
can talk
planning
about
board
that.
kicked it to us, saying,
But they
you know.
kicked it to you though for a specific purpose, was whether you're gonna reduce the overall units down. And that's what the resolution from the planning board asked you to do, was look at the special permit and reduce the units.
I have one
But
question.
I think that's being
I have one
done by
question.
de
I'm
facto.
I'm not here for the golf course, I don't care about the golf course.
We didn't need it.
I wanna discuss, now, you're going from 300 specially permitted, and you wanna knock it down to 277, and that knockdown is pretty much because of the flow and because of the
We're agreeing to
the
do
health
that.
department
We're
issue.
agreeing to do
You
that.
agreeing to- My question is why?
There's no remaining land.
I know that, but, I mean, if you only built 277, you're allowed to build 300, then.
It was a condition.
They can't flush.
Well, I know that, they would
well,
never build 300, but.
You're right, 'cause
It's a
the
But
condition, it was a
What if
It's
it
not
changes
necessary.
50 years from now and the whole formula
The
changes?
question
Well,
why, the why question, the answer to the why is the planning board made it a condition of our building permit.
Oh, okay.
And with all.
They wanted it
And with
covered
all
in.
due respect, we
Couldn't
we
understand
we
why
we
they were doing
questioned,
that.
and we had multiple discussions and made our arguments of why this was not required.
Well,
But in the end of the day, you know, we were trying to develop our final parcel.
Understand?
We understood there was, I think, 150 gallons remaining after all the units were as proposed and have been approved by the health department. There was a permanent easement on this vacant parcel, which we did not intend to develop, and we were selling off as part of the entire parcel. And we're trying to close the chapter on this book,
So
which
they
we've been
agreed to do
into since
whatever.
1993.
Well, and
We
as a
said-
I think it's a
practical-
great idea,
but as a-
I support it.
But as a
I'm in
prac-
favor of it.
as a
Great idea.
practical matter though, going back to all of these prior phase developments,
Love it.
from the time we went from 144 and
sport.
agreed to 174 to 144 back in the 90s, part of the planning approval, wasn't that we come back to you guys overall. The planning approval said though, site plan said, we couldn't come in and increase that number. So, yes, was it a concession at that time we gave, in part because we were constrained by this flow on the site? Yes, but it was something the applicant agreed to then. They did it again when the next approval was given, they put
Right.
the same condition
It
in there.
just keeps-
And it's coming forward, and rightly or wrongly, there's no more land to develop on this particular site. The overall site was constrained by the special permit and divvied off how development would occur. If the golf course wants to acquire more property and have development rights with that, and then talk about transferring those, that's a separate issue from
I
this,
agree.
okay?
And that's why I'm saying that it's not our job to extinguish the 23 development rights that are left. And if those 23 development rights could exist another way, somewhere down the road, where.
Those 23 rights
If I
would
could
exist.
finish, where if one of these houses that you're building gets knocked down and you decide to knock down all the houses and make multifamily 2 units per house, you could do that. If they were under 1,200 square feet.
You can always
So,
come back and make that application.
understood, but not if we extinguish the 300 units.
You could always reestablish anything you extinguish. with the town
You're
board.
never gonna get the density back.
We're not looking for the density. This is.
Yeah, I like the less density, all right.
The
Here's
applicant, we
resolution, I'll sign
have
it
the
right now.
option
Okay,
of making requests and following through. On all the concessions we've made, if we wanna get into a dispute, what we're most concerned with and upset with, we can talk about those. Because we do have concerns about pushback that's happened along the way, and we've
Yeah.
certainly had those discussions. When it comes to these particular units though, we do believe that that was a fair ask of the town back when it was done with the planning originally. We believe it was a fair constraint that was put on, and in fact, when we discovered we could do more units because we had the flow and less, the town worked with us to allow it to come up. I think this board also would have been reasonable if we'd been at 270 and said, look, the basis of that was the flow and we have more flow. I don't think this board would have said, no, we're not gonna give you those extra units because we issued a special permit 30 years ago that said you could only have 270. I think this board would have looked at it practically, at least that's what I would hope what
And
any
then
of the
also-
boards would
and
do.
then And then also you tie it into that groundwater management covenant.
Right.
Which talks about a sewage treatment plant, and we're at, 40,650 gallons. What are we talking about?
I know, but what I'm talking about is, for example, the building that's on the main road where there's 6 units there that you wanna refurbish and you wanna sell those. If in fact you decided to add 2 more units onto that building at a later date, like, why are we cutting back on your yield? You could potentially build another 23 units alongside any of those buildings that exist on the site. To
but
me,
yes-
it sounds like extortion.
But a theory, I understand that, however.
And you
and
agree.
Yes, I do agree, however, whenever you get an approval has to be still limited by what the codes all allow to have happen, development. A yield map that was done originally for the 300 was a projection, because the practicality is when you start going and digging, when you start going through each of the different committees and boards and what their constraints are, You may have started with 300 and you may wind up with 280, just because when you you hit bedrock and then you can't do the drainage and then you don't have the flow there and you don't have other issues that come up. So a theoretical number is great, but when it comes down to it, as a practical matter, on this particular site, given how much land there is, given how much development's happened, how much conservation easements and other declarations are already in overlaying on this particular property, the applicant is not contesting the planning board's condition for 277. There are other things we are a lot more upset with that are a lot larger issue for us. If you wanna talk about constraints and issues that have come along the way that impede development in this community. For this particular applicant, this particular application, what we're looking for is not to bring to you a concern that we have about the reduction to 277 from 300.
So you're asking us to adjust the special permit down from 300 to 277 so that you can move forward in the
Correct.
process?
And accept the filing of covenants.
Back to the beginning.
So-
Correct.
We're ready, we got a final site plan approval.
So
Okay.
are we okay to move forward with that?
I'm not supporting that. I think that the planning board is completely out of line, kicking it back to us, asking us to drop it down from 300 to 277. I think there is potential for the developer for more acreage, and after hearing the story, talking to Russ on the phone for an hour yesterday, and listening to Chris at the mic, and listening to you today, I feel like the town of Riverhead has not been very forthcoming and upright with you. And I apologize for that.
And I'm gonna say this parcel is the 191 acres.
Correct.
On this is the 47 acres of this
Correct.
original thing. The remaining is a golf course that has an easement that you cannot develop any further housing on.
Correct.
Correct? So what you're asking is of the total 191 parcel that you originally came with, that you had the restrictions by special permit to only develop 300, it has now come to pass because of the flow, that you can only build 277, you are in agreement to reduce that down to 277 and have us change the special permit that was originally granted by the town board for the 300 to be reduced.
Correct.
Right.
So the question is there enough support on the board to bring that forward at the next meeting?
Is there any value to the yield of 23?
Yeah.
Well,
You could
not because
transfer it.
We'd have to build a sewage treatment plant.
No, you could
build the-
transfer the 23 units, transfer the development rights.
This is
of
not
the
a
yield.
sending area, though. You have to have a sending area to have a
This is
receiving
receive-
area.
This is a receiving area.
Right, you can't, it's not a sending area.
So it's a receiving area, so they could actually transfer flow, and they could all contest the health department covenants from 1993, saying that the flow could be
1999,
transferred back. Yep, if it is a receiving area. You could build those 23 units if you wanted to go back to the health department
No,
and
because
say,
the
No, 'cause
condition is
it's
a
sewer.
sewage treatment plant. They want a sewage treatment plant.
okay, so even if you did that.
It's even worse now, by the way, just to let you know, this is the Long Island Sound, which is being protected by multiple levels by the Health Department, by the New York State Department of State, under their coastal management, plan that they established for the Long Island Sound. So it's even less likely to get that.
What's the depth of
approval.
groundwater?
Oh, this is very high ground.
Yeah, so
But
there's
the fact
plenty
that
of
it's on the
sand to
sound-
drain through.
There are more restrictions in place now than there were in 1999. More restrictive, not less. So,
From the health department.
from the Health Department.
Laura,
from
to
the state
answer
of
your
New York.
question, I think that, it's actually less intense than what was as of right, and I realize it was put that way because of the flow, but I drink Long Island water every day, so I appreciate that there are those kind of restrictions on you. It's your property, it's your development, you're the owner, you're willing to reduce your yield in order to finish the project. I think it's a home run.
I'm in agreement. I would approve it.
All
Also, I'm okay moving forward, Tim?
No.
Okay.
This is where you're adding the new units, right?
Right in this area.
In the building
There's
that,
already 6
this is
there.
the building that's here?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're gonna be refurbished?
Yes.
Just curious.
All right, so we can put it back up for resolution and we'll,
Okay, thank you.
And again, I
I think we
apologize
tabled-
for your
tabled it
delays
once. I think
over
we
the years
tabled
and
it.
your battles.
Thank you.
I think we tabled it, right, Bob? We had tabled, this was
Yes.
tabled.
But
for a
you
while.
gave great
Okay.
presentation, so thank
I
you.
just wanted to get more
Thank you for your
clarification
time.
exactly why it was here, that's all. I mean, I heard a
You're
lot
taking
of-
your time today.
Why don't you
I
send
would,
it to
yeah,
Bob
I
so
would
that
need
it's
a
on
copy of
record?
this, just so you
I'd
have.
like it.
He-
Yeah.
Bob, I believe emailed in, there is an additional scenic easement from 84, the year after this one, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4,
Oh, okay, sir.
5. You guys.
Thank you. Thank
So
you.
this is
Thank
It's a
you.
full day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your
Thank you,
time.
you're welcome.
Thank you for your time.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Russ.
While he's thinking, say, if it
Sorry.
was this,
Thank you
why
so
can't
much
we
for your
do
time.
that golf course, but that golf course was
Thank you for your
Thank you.
time.
Thank you, you were quite,
Hey, I like how we are, go get 'em.
Sometimes you gotta be, right?
Yes. Don't we know?
Whatever they're not gonna use, he can have, 'cause that was.
All right, we, at this point, all right, at this point, we will move on to town board liaison update. So, anybody have updates?
I do.
Already?
So,
Hey, psst, quiet down over there.
Well, we're done, right?
No, we have
No,
town
we
board
have town
liaison
board
update.
Oh, oh, Lord, sorry. All right, I'll sit.
Bye, Bob.
Thank you.
You can school me later.
all right, so I met with the Key Club yesterday, and they're putting their skit together, and I think you're all gonna be very excited to see it. It's gonna be humorous, and it's going to be educational for the taxpayers as to what's recyclable and what's not
Recycling's no
recyclable.
joke.
And so they would like to do their presentation here after work session on June 20th. And hopefully we can allow Larry to film it so that we can get it on Channel 22. So around 2 o'clock, 2:15 on June 20th.
What time?
June 20th, 2 o'clock.
Because they get out of school at 2, so they'll come right over after school and then they'll do the skit. There's probably about 15 kids that are gonna be involved in the skit. Mr. Mandrish, is that his?
Dr. Mandrash,
Dr. Mandrish is working with them. He was there yesterday. and
science teacher.
Yeah, it's very exciting. We might even get into
school.
a little bit of composting and reducing garbage production in the households, and so it's very exciting. The kids are very excited about it. So that's June 20th. And then the trail,
If they wanna come early, cause I think they're just testing that week, right?
they said they don't get out of school till 2 that day.
Okay.
So if they get out earlier and I can get them here earlier, then I'll let you know, but
Okay.
right now they said 2. And the ribbon cutting for the Vietnam Veterans Recreation Trail is scheduled for July 1st. You should all be getting a press release on that.
What time is that?
I think it's gonna be at 10:30 or 11. Joe Majorano was working out the times with Krupski, Senator Laval, Assemblyman Palumbo, and the State Parks Department, who's bringing some of their representatives out. And I think we're gonna have the Wounded Warriors there, the Vietnam Veterans Association, and other entities to kick off the ribbon cutting. So July 1st.
Okay.
And you'll be getting the press release on that shortly.
I think it's 11:30 maybe?
He was, Joe
No,
was
someone keeps
confirming,
calling him.
Joe was confirming the times with,
Okay,
all of those
Everybody
entities,
else,
so,
okay.
yeah.
Yep,
So I
okay.
just wanted to give you enough notice that it's gonna be July 1st, somewhere between 10 and 12.
okay, so that'll be a Monday, right? For
Yep.
people that wanna come to that?
Yes.
Okay.
You done?
Yeah.
Seniors are still conducting a survey for the ideas for going forward with new programs and such for the Senior Citizen Center. So the surveys are still out there, they're available here at Town Hall, Library, Hospital, Senior Center. I think we have just under 200 have been turned in so far. We're gonna keep collecting them, I believe, until the 1st of July, and we're hoping to get at least 200, because we feel we could get a good idea of what people are looking for with a minimum number of 200 entries or surveys turned in.
Okay,
So they're still available.
that's it, you seem like we're gonna keep going.
No?
I don't wanna cut anybody off. I'm just gonna talk about the helicopter task force a minute. I think the helicopter traffic in Riverhead has really picked up this year. I actually was on a beach at the end of Oakley last weekend, and I think there were helicopters every 30 seconds. And they're transitioning at different places now.
Mhm.
Yesterday, I had one go barely over the top of the trees at my house. And I think it's important for people to log in. It shows on our website where you log in and do a formal complaint. Because the way it works is if 5 people keep making this complaints over and over, it doesn't count. It only counts each person. So So the more people in Riverhead that log in and report the complaint, it actually took about 2 minutes for me to do it. That it'll be helpful with us along the North Shore because we have a lot of helicopters that are coming in the North Shore and going out the North Shore.
Well, I noticed a lot more also coming over my backyard.
Because they're changing their transition
They're changing
point.
around, absolutely,
Right.
because they're coming over on an angle.
Yeah, they're
They're not flying
They're going down
directly east.
Peconic, they're going down
That's-
Peconic Bay further and not going over at Jamesport, and they're
Right.
transitioning forward, but what's coming over where it used to be is the seaplanes. So
Right.
the seaplanes are coming this way and the helicopters are going a little bit further west before
Mm-hmm.
they transition.
So no one is helping us along the North Shore. We have to continue to stand up for ourselves by
Yeah.
logging in these complaints. And yes, they are, I mean, I see a lot of them transitioning over my house now, which they used to go down to the tanks.
So, one of the things, because I was at a breakfast a couple of weeks ago with Congressman Zeldin, and Teresa McCaskey was there, and I asked her to bring the information back to you, and I was also, actually, it was last Monday or Tuesday, that he had a breakfast, and Tara was there, she reported on it, but one of the recommendations that Congressman Zeldin made was to put in requests, because the FAA extended the time period for those surveys to be filled out, but they didn't put an expiration date on the surveys, so they're not reporting to us the number of surveys that were actually filled out and the complaints that were made. I think there's a total of 337 now that no one can have access to until the extension period ends. So we need to request from the FAA that they put a deadline on that extension period for the surveys and the complaints to be filled out. And then after the deadline has been met, then get those surveys back so that we can put together a comprehensive plan between the town of Southold and the town of Riverhead to, go back to the FAA with the flight patterns and everything else. So I agree with Catherine that it's very important that you document or you log in and say where
It's really quick, you put in your name, your address, I think I clicked the color of the helicopter and that it was so low and I was done. But I also ran into Mark Woolley last weekend, who works for Lee Zeldin, and we had a conversation about having a joint meeting between Southold and Riverhead, because we share the same problems, and I'm in touch with Bob Guzzio,
Yes.
and we're working on that right now.
And if it's okay from the board, we'll draft a letter that we can all sign to send to the FAA.
Absolutely.
Once again, requesting a meeting for the summer, and also the Eastern Helicopter Advisory Committee, which the FAA seems to defer to a lot as to the routes of the plane and why they're doing it. So we'll draft a letter, I will circulate it to the board, we can all sign it. We can circulate it to Southold also, if they want to join in.
draft letter asking for the deadline and for the extension
We can ask for that, but we
deadline.
can also ask for a meeting, because they're supposed to do a yearly, I think, a Good Sky meeting with the different towns, so we'll request that meeting for them to come out here, and then also the Eastern Helicopter Advisory Committee, to come out here and speak to us.
Yeah, and it was a great conference, a press conference that Lori put together back in I think it was
Except
January.
it was
February.
cold.
But there weren't, but there weren't any helicopters, so
No.
now would be a perfect time to go to
Yeah, this
have
would
a
be a
press
better time of
conference
year.
there, yeah.
Sometimes even when I talk about the helicopters in town to people, they'll say, oh, those people are just complainers. I'm telling you, more and more people in Riverhead are gonna be affected, because like you were mentioning, that they're going over you, and they're gonna be going over Riverhead more and more.
Mhm. And then also over the Northville tanks, Teresa was saying something about the crash
Right.
gear that they should have on their planes, so that if they're about to crash, that they don't crash into the tanks. And
Yeah, it's not good that they're flying over big oil tanks.
Any other committee reports?
No, open space and farmland are both working very diligently on with landmarks to get their priority list
Do
together.
you really have cigarettes on the table?
I do, because she's chewing gum and she
Don't
says, 'cause she
smoke.
doesn't smoke. No, well, it's not lit yet, but there was a time we could. And then, anti-litter, we've got another meeting coming up we did our litter campaign, but now we're trying to think of a full one, and we're thinking of, we're moving forward with the slogan, and, everybody's always asking me about these shredding events, and I hate to do it with local businesses, but they always we have a shredding event on the 23rd of June, just to let everybody know. It's a Sunday from 8 to 12.
Where is that?
That's at Mangano, believe it or not, but it's open to the public, and
This Sunday?
23rd.
Oh, the 23rd.
And people love to bring their stuff to shred it, and everybody asked me about it, so come on down and bring your stuff that you wanna shred, paperwork, maybe some old local reports and, news days and stuff like that. Especially any article that you might have printed off a Rivet Local and you really wanna
I
shred
knew you
it.
were gonna say that. Not the news review, though.
Couple pictures of it.
All
I'd
right,
like to shred.
can I get a first and second to go into executive session, which is personnel matters surrounding the hiring of an employee, contractual negotiation of an employee's salary,
Good night.
negotiation of an employee's contract, litigation, current litigation in the matter of Town of Riverhead versus Bating Hollow Farms, LLC Bating Hollow Farms Vineyard, Steve Levine, Sharon Levine, and Richard Rubin, and next is potential litigation, litigation came of Raymond Atkins.
So moved.
So moved.
All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? So carried?
My bladder's in favor.